Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. Happy Friday. We are here live on June the 6th, 2025, doing live astrology readings. So if you guys can see me, give me a thumbs up, like the stream, consider sharing, and please subscribe. If you're new to the channel, welcome. It's nice to meet you. We're here every Friday, and we alternate between each week for tarot or astrology readings. A bit of like a psych. I wasn't gonna do a Friday because I had stuff going on, but then I ended up making it work. So I'm happy to be here. And yeah, hopefully your guys' weekend is off to a great start. This week, we're talking all about what's going on with transits in particular. If you guys have questions about this up and coming full moon in the sign of Sagittarius, I'm happy to help you out. But yes, we are here live on the 6th. So if you're watching this on Saturday, Sunday, we're no longer live. If you send any payments, we will refund you. Sometimes we get people that get excited and send payments. So we're here every Friday, generally around 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. That's 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. How is it going, guys? All right, so this is the first time that you guys are getting a reading. In order to get into the queue and get a reading, you got to scan this QR code. It's going to take you to my PayPal. We charge $55 US for a donation for a reading. Please, in the memo box, please put your first name. You can also put your alias if you want to use an alias, as well as your birth information. So I need to know the date, the exact time, including AM and PM. Please spell out the month because we have people who are from all over the world, along with your one specific question. We're only answering one question per person. We're also doing synastry readings if you'd like to get one of those as well. All the information is going across the bottom in terms of the information we need and the prices. Or you can consider joining my memberships. I have several different levels, but level 3 is gonna get you into the front of the line. We take level 3 people first, and you guys are gonna get a reading with me, your choice of tarot or astrology, once a month. And at the beginning of the month, I always do like a master readout of all of the people who are supporting. You guys get your shout outs if you're level 2 and level 3. So let me do that and go ahead and thank everybody for your guys' support. So we've got people like Maria, Angie, Ripples, Jessie G, Golden Sun, Giggly Rose, G, Rosie, Spirited Door, Katie, Janie, Contessa of the Divine, Natalie, La Morena, Ashley Johnson, Janet, Katia, Jess, we've got Lisa MC4, Shay XO. Oh yeah, we got a few pages here. Sorry guys. On top of that, let's go to level 2, page 2. Salty Mama Soul Tribe, Smoky Brown Eyes, Dorothy, Claire, Laverne, Darlene, Christine, Erica, Grow Up Together, Victoria Rusk, Deanna, Sharon Grant, Emma, Taliba, and Susan Wexler. So thank you guys for supporting me and my work as a full-time content creator, astrologer. The list goes on. And we will let you guys know basically the order that we're doing the readings in. Like I said, we always take level 3 people first. So I already have a number of people who are already in the queue. So La Morena, Corey, Angie, Maria, it looks like Coco got in there, as did Rosie. So if there's anybody else that wants to pop in here that's a level 3 member, let me know. This is also the first week that we're gonna be doing readings all month long. So if you guys can't catch me today, you guys can always come back one of the other Fridays. And we'll be here in 2 weeks doing astrology readings again. Next week will be tarot. A little bit of info just at the top of the video. Also, we're gonna be putting out a video on Sunday for the astro weather. I'm talking all about the transits for the week ahead, including Mercury's ingress into the sign of Cancer. We're gonna talk about what that means for the 12 signs. I'm gonna give you the week by week, I guess the day by day kind of expectations for the astrology. Big things are happening this week between the Jupiter ingress into Cancer, the Jupiter-Saturn square, Mercury going into Cancer, full moon in Sag, and at the end of the week, Mars in Leo squares Uranus in Taurus. So guys, so many things happening this week. And if you're wanting some assistance and some help in navigating the Saturn and Aries transit, I just recently dropped my newest webinar, my Saturn and Aries boot camp. So for those of you guys who have any personal planets in Aries, maybe a sun, moon, or rising, or if you're coming into your Saturn's return, I got you covered. Almost 2 hours of content. I'm going to talk all about how to navigate the transit, what to watch for, what to expect, and how to tackle this transit with confidence. You guys can find all of my courses, including this one and much more, at beyondtheveiltarot.com. I always have all the links in the description below, so head over to my website. And while you're there, sign up for my newsletter. I do not spam you guys. I only send out emails when we're having like the horoscopes monthly, or if we have new webinars or courses or products that kind of hit the website. So that's my shameless plug. So let's go ahead and get into who we've got. So other than the people who have popped in, are there any other level 3 people that are wanting to get in? What's up, Dorothy? Hey, Mystic Road. Katie. Corey's here. Coco's here. What's up, Madison? I know we got a lot of people. And then also we have in the queue, Katie J, Heart of Moana, Raina, Kelly, Kimberly. Is there anybody else who popped in? Let's see. And we'll probably, at some point, we'll try to get these up so you guys can see them. And then it looks like Liss got in there as well. So if you heard your name, that means I've got you. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer to get through the astrology reading, so I appreciate your guys' patience. I'll call a couple names in advance just so you know that your reading is coming up. And for whatever reason, if you can't stay for the reading, you guys can come back and watch this video. It's going to stay on the channel, so you can come back at a later date and let me know how the reading played out for you, or you can watch it later tonight into tomorrow whenever you need it. All right, so let's take a look at who we're going to start with. So we were going to start with La Morena, Corey, and then Angie. You guys are all going to be first. Thanks for being level 3 members. I appreciate it. I've got La Morena here at January 11th, 89, 2:33 p.m. And it looks like that puts you at a Gemini rising, Sun in Capricorn, and Moon in Pisces. She asks, hey Candace, I would like to know what my chart says about my purpose. Although I'm rather good at what I'm doing, I'm really not fulfilled by it. Good question. So kind of an interesting time in your astrology right now. As you know, probably watched some of my videos, I like to use Placidus. I don't use whole sign, okay? So that's where my readings are a little bit different with my one-on-one or with my lives. But I say it's an interesting time because you have been going through eclipses which have just recently started up in your 10th house of career. Maybe this is about your public persona, your identity out in the world professionally. And those North Node eclipses, which started in the September period of 2024, are going to be kind of rolling every 6 months, okay? We're going to see eclipses that are going to kind of come through here. That's going to put an emphasis on both your moon, which is, you know, how you feel, but also it's going to be about your public face, and it's in a water sign. So it's about your intuition, your emotions connected to what you do for a living, and your values. And that's the thing about being an air sign that's like a rising sign. You're going to have water signs in your work and finance houses, the 2nd, 6th, and 10th. So how you feel about what you're doing, the money that you make, your sacrifice, your service, your long-term goals, it's all kind of tied to your emotions. So as these eclipses are kind of rolling through your 10th house over the next year or two, you're also going to see that Jupiter is going to be moving into your 2nd house. And that means that you may feel like there's more opportunities for professional growth. Maybe there's opportunities for certainly new relationship growth, but how you're making money, what you're doing for a living, and if you feel good about some of the changes that you're making. So your emotions and your intuition is going to kind of be the driving, I guess, force for changes that you might be making in your professional life. Traditionally, you know, we see Pisces is the whole sign rise, the whole sign, 10th house, you know, kind of sign. But for you, Aquarius is actually on your MC. So you're very much kind of impacted by Saturn transits, Uranus transits. So I'm also looking at like Uranus going over your Jupiter, which means you're starting to kind of quietly pause and reflect, and maybe you're getting feedback. Certainly Jupiter rules like counselors, therapists, astrologers on what you could or should be doing. And it's happening in your 12th house where you feel like something is concluding or completing. The other thing that I was thinking about is like in terms of your destiny or what you're meant to do, I always kind of look at what's going on with the North Node, both by placement, sign, as well as ruler. So the North Node being in the 10th house means that you're here to take on much more of a professional, maybe even public, stance in your professional life. And it is conjunct the moon. So certainly listening to your gut, your emotions, or doing something that's more empathic, caring, even creative is a part of your destiny and your purpose. Some would say, you know, with the moon being tied to your second house, you could work with financing, you could work with property, with real estate, with agriculture, with food, a number of things. But I think that as the North Node is coming into contact over the next like year or so with your moon, there is going to be some kind of shift that's going to happen where you're going to be more focused on listening to your gut when it comes to making changes with your career. That's going to be pretty strong starting at the end of 2025. And when that's happening, the ruler of the North Node, Jupiter, is also in a trine with Saturn. So I think you're going to see nice opportunities for change to realign what you're doing with your emotions and like what your values are towards the end of the year. Probably sometime between September when the eclipses hit and the beginning of next year is when you'll see those kind of windows of opportunities opening. And then also you're going to see the North Node coming into conjunction with your natal North Node where you're going to have your nodal return, and that's going to be happening next year, closer to like April, May of 2026. This happens every 18 and a half, 19 years. It's kind of like a hard realignment where you get on the path of where you're supposed to be. And what I notice about this next spring is that when the North Node hits the North Node, Jupiter is direct in your second house. So it tells me whatever you've been working out from the fall of 2025 to the spring of 2026, it comes more so into alignment and you're feeling better about what you're doing. But instinctually navigating your career, doing something with lunar things, women, it could be involving property, home, anything kind of connected to your intuition, caretaking, you know, that type of stuff. And I also, you know, think about how from the perspective of like Saturn, you know, Saturn is also coming into conjunction over the next couple of years with your Mars. And that's in the 11th house, which is going to be about your goals and communities. So I'm not entirely sure what it is you do. I can just tell you that it is important that you're kind of really applying some of the themes of the Pisces, North Node, Moon in your natal 10th. Sometimes I see people who are like counselors, or sometimes they're like healers or intuitive type people. I mean, your moon is at an 11, so obviously you're going to have a pull or a draw towards things that are more Uranian or different or unconventional. So it is possible that you're going to have an interest in things that are like mystical, magical, kind of healing things. And when we look at your natal Jupiter in your chart, it's actually situated in the 12th house. So it can represent like hidden talents and things revolving around like behind the scenes work, and like when you're releasing and letting go of old outdated ways of feeling like you have to manage your day-to-day life or your resources, even your money. There are some changes there. Maybe you're really good with banking and investments and finance as well, or money management, because Jupiter is tied to your whole sign 10th. And then when we look at it from the perspective of your Saturn, which is the ruler of your Placidus 10th house, Saturn is in your 7th house connected to Uranus, Venus, and Neptune. So it's a part of a Capricorn stellium that you have, which also aspects your moon. I would say with this many planets in your 7th house, counseling, relationship, partnership, business partnership, clients, you know, services that you can kind of give to other people. So I'm wondering like if you do anything already where you have clients or you're like in the service industry, because there's a lot of like ties to helping other people and being able to kind of help guide them feel safe and secure, as it's also making aspects to your moon, ruler of the 2nd house. I do think that, you know, even beyond the eclipses that you're going to have in Pisces and like the North Node in Pisces, even next spring, you're going to have eclipses in Aquarius. So you're going to see that that's also going to start dinging your Placidus midheaven, and you'll have a solar eclipse around February 17, 2026. That's going to be right at the top part of your chart, ruled by Uranus, square Uranus, which tells me that even if you wait until the beginning of 2026, there is something brand new that's emerging that's kind of breaking out. Whole sign 9th, maybe it's going to be traveling or studying or getting some kind of certification for the things you want to do, formal or informal. But certainly this is where things start to crack wide open while it squares Jupiter and also transit Uranus while you're going through a Mercury retrograde in your 10th house. So I give this until about maybe February, March that you've been sitting with some of this stuff, making some decisions about where you're going to kind of shift into something that feels more emotionally kind of meaningful and making money in a way that feels like it's in alignment with what your true values are. So hopefully that's helpful for you. All right, we've got Corey and then Angie and Maria. What's up, Corey? How's it going? All right, so Corey, I have you here, Pisces rising, sun in Taurus, and your moon is in Gemini. All right, let's see what Corey says. I think she actually sent it through PayPal. Here we go. Corey says, hi, I've been feeling a little disenchanted with my career lately, and I'd like to know what the astrology forecast for the next 6 to 12 months, any major changes or advice. Thank you. All right, well, let's talk about it. Well, I think, you know, part of what's going on is you're feeling the Jupiter ingress. Jupiter doesn't just rule your natal chart because it's your ascendant lord, but it's also connected to your 10th house of career. I want you to look at your midheaven here, okay? Whole sign, whichever way you slice it, whether you look at Saturn and Neptune squaring your Placidus midheaven for the next year. So it's like this feeling of, oh, I need to personally dissolve something, or disenchanted is very Saturn Neptune, I think, with the reality and like the physical demands of the job compared to what you would rather be doing, teaching, traveling, experimenting, exploring, Sagittarius things. Or you think of this from the whole sign perspective, where you're getting ready to see Uranus go into Gemini and oppose your midheaven. Okay, so both things are kind of saying the same thing, getting kind of restless, wanting to make a change while simultaneously trying to figure out how to bring, you know, strength and stability into some kind of consistent position. You're also experiencing transit Saturn in your first house of self and like commitment squaring Neptune. Okay, so that is in your Placidus 10th house, and that can mean, because Neptune rules your chart, you're like, when it comes to my job, Neptune and Capricorn, I'm not really physically feeling it. I'm not feeling as inspired. Like there's something that's kind of working itself out. So, you know, with Saturn, Neptune going in and out of Aries, in your first house, it's going to deal more with like your physical energy and your commitment and your vision, and whether or not it's lining up with what you have always done. Certainly Neptune is retrograde in the 10th. So you might want to be making some, you know, some changes in your career throughout your life from time to time. And between now and like next spring, Saturn and Neptune are squaring that. So from the perspective of Pisces, you know, whole sign chart, Saturn and Neptune going into the second house is like, I need to make money in a new way, or I need to find ways to be more, you know, taking more risks, or being a little bit more aware of like what my talents are and like how I can apply myself. She says, I don't want to put more time into professional development. Well, I don't blame you, and I wouldn't. I think with Uranus coming into your third house and like opposing your ninth, I don't feel like you have to go and do any further like certification per se. You might decide that you want to learn something new, but it might be something that you're doing remotely. So it seems more something you would do on your own. Like Gemini third house is, you know, continuing education that's informal, maybe doing online stuff, or just like self-education. You don't necessarily need to go and get like a certification or a degree. I think the other thing is that we need to see like a really strong Jupiter transit, both to your natal transit, your natal Jupiter, as well as transit Jupiter, to see something change. So, you know, Jupiter and Saturn are kind of in a landlock right now, where you want to do new things either on the home front or in terms of like business, but it's squaring Saturn and Neptune. So there is this sense of, well, can I do it? Is it possible? Do I have the time? And also this can mean that there's something clashing revolving around home and family obligations, home expense relation, you know, kind of things that are related, versus, you know, how you have been wanting to kind of get out of your current position or occupation, or you're wanting to make a change. So you're feeling more so obligated or committed, I think, to kind of holding down the fort. From a whole sign perspective, to kind of give you both, I think that this is also going to be about, well, if I am going to start something new, you know, Jupiter going into the whole sign fifth, and it's going to square Saturn, how can I do something that's not going to take a lot of time or energy or resources? Like it's like starting a business or doing something where you're not really putting up a lot of money to make that change. When do I think you're going to see, you know, or where do I see this going, I guess is really what you asked. Saturn and Neptune squaring between now and February, March of next year tells me that you're still kind of in this pigeonhole of, do I do this or do I do something else? And I feel like it could be a slow segue, and you may see opportunities to start changing your schedule and like segueing out of things in the end of July into August. And that's going to be when you have a Mercury retrograde taking place in your 6th. And then you're also going to see a Mercury retrograde that's going to be taking place in your 10th house. That's going to be happening mid-November into December. Those are pivot points. And what I like about these times is that, you know, Mercury is going to represent changes with partnerships, with clients, and, you know, the willingness maybe to work with new people. And it's going to trine and make aspects to Saturn and Neptune both ways. So both of those times you actually want to work with some kind of shift. But realistically, I think you're going to see some of the best changes come about when Jupiter, your 10th house lord, is in a trine with Saturn. So you're looking at the end of October through about December. And then you're going to see Jupiter go direct in your 5th house. So if you are starting something new, side hustle, new business, something. Also, Jupiter in the 5th is like relating to entertainment, relating to children, relating to home and domestic projects, interior design, anything in regards to like real estate, property, furniture, like things that are creative that allows you to do it from home, right? You will see some of those things move forward a little bit, even more so in the spring of next year. And my thought is when that Jupiter trine your ascendant and all this other stuff is kind of concluding and we start to see Saturn and Neptune coming out of the square with your natal Neptune, things may get easier. And, you know, still you're going to have Saturn squared, you know, Jupiter. So it tells me that you're still going to have to stick to like a budget and be aware of expenses and when it costs to go into a new business. You're also going to need to really focus on creating a network or a community or putting yourself out there or kind of like networking and aligning with like other people in your field professionally. But I think it's very doable. And I also think that, you know, knowing that you're going to have Jupiter going into your 6th house where you could have quite a bit of creative work next year, you might really start to see things kind of stabilize right around the end of summer going into fall. So I see this as, all right, she's going to start something new, basically, you know, kind of summer of 2025. She's going to stick with it, see if it's making money. She's also going to see if she likes what she's doing and if she enjoys it and if it's something that can actually bring her pleasure or joy. And as we get into the fall, we can start to see if it's actually really starting to grow and develop. So that way, as we go into 2026, if you're deciding that you do want to make a segue or a pivot into this, you can, but you're going to have to kind of build the foundation first, right? And obviously, you know, with Jupiter being the ruler of your career house, not just Jupiter transits, it transits your natal Jupiter. If you look at your natal Jupiter, it's a bit debilitated. It's in your whole sign 11th, so it's great for community and an audience and giving something back to people and what people give you. And that Jupiter makes some decent aspects in your chart. Trines your sun, right? Sextiles your Saturn. I feel like this could be really wonderful for creating something that could be, yeah, sure, divination, but also like teaching and education if that's something else that you wanted to do. And what a fun way to kind of kick off the Uranus and Gemini transit, right? It's technically going through your Placidus third. So it's going to be like, do I start a channel? Do I start a YouTube? Do I do a blog? What do I do? And the 3rd house is definitely kind of connected to information and channeling and things you can kind of do with your hands. So that could be fun with like Uranus on your Chiron, that you're, you know, finding ways to channel and deliver like healing messages to people. And you're going to see that it'll also be trining Pluto in your 11th house. So it's great for starting to kind of build a following and building a community. So yeah, I definitely think that that's a good idea if you want to make a pivot. But what I'll tell you is the older that you get, because you have your midheaven at 22 and the ruler is in Capricorn, the more stable and secure, and also the more you're going to start to kind of like trust yourself. Right? And obviously Jupiter trines your sun. So it's like, you know, financially you can build wealth doing some of this stuff, but I see what you're saying. Like, you know, gardening, Reiki, cooking, like I like the incorporation of like the different elements and also their earth elements. So it's going to be very grounded. You can also talk about gardening, crystals, jewelry, you know, like that kind of stuff. And it can be kind of tied into some of the other interests that you're wanting to kind of bring across your channel. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Definitely an interesting time having Jupiter going into your 5th house and you want to create, well, Saturn's in your 2nd, you kind of have to stick to a budget, but it's about really investing your time or energy in things that you feel like are like meaningful, you know? Anyway, I hope that's helpful for you. All right, we've got Angie, Maria, and then Coco. What's up, Angie? You're very welcome. Angie, are you new around here? I think I added you in here, yeah? All right, let's see. Angie says 9/21/84, 12:47 p.m. in Oklahoma. And she says, hello, and thank you, Candace. I like to focus on buying a home and hoping to be moved by the fall. Do you see that being a possibility? Well, I've got you Sag rising, Sun in Virgo, and your moon is in Leo. All right. So here's the deal. Both in terms of your chart, because you're Sag rising, and also your fourth house, which is home, is going to represent, it's going to be represented by Jupiter transits. So, I think a lot of Sag risings right now that are coming out of having had Saturn and Neptune in the fourth house are kind of like, okay, put an end to one home situation. I'm ready to start the next one, right? Especially if it's still in your fourth house like you. Positive is that I do think with some of the trines to your ascendant, it does support like a new opportunity when it comes to the home and living situation. However, this last year, you have had Saturn in the fourth house where you feel grounded or rooted or stuck somewhere in a square with Jupiter. So it means that perhaps maybe you have felt like you need more assistance or you need help. That could be with a real estate agent, that could be with a family member, that could be with a spouse or a partner. Like you need some assistance or you need some help. And the Jupiter-Saturn square is going to happen one more time. We're actually going to see this happen over like the next week. So before something can expand, right, we actually need to focus on like long-term groundedness and planning. And I think I would say this to any Sag rising. I would be like, hey, like really make sure that if you're going to move somewhere that you're really sure about where you want to move to, because sometimes in, Aries placements want to rush into something or they want to do something very quickly. And Saturn is saying you need to really get clarity about the place that you're going. You need to make sure you're going to like it there. Are you going to feel isolated or alone there? Or are you going to move into a place where you buy something and then you find out, oh, there's issues with the water heater. Literally, Saturn, Neptune, and Aries can be that. Issues that are happening with the foundation, or that there has been some, maybe there's a fire in the house or something that affected the home. So first things first is know where you want to go. Be sure about the area. 2 is you need to get a really good inspection on anything you buy for the next couple of years. Because there can be things that can be kind of hidden or secretive that are in the floors and the walls, things like that can cause some structural issue. Ownership, actually owning something, is going to be more tied to your second house. So Saturn is there, Neptune is here, trining your ascendant. Does seem to kind of suggest that it is possible for you to be able to move. However, it's now starting to come into a square with your natal Jupiter. And according to whole sign, your Jupiter is in the second house. So that could mean that you're willing to spend the money, the excess money, typically, or you're working hard for the things that you purchase. But I feel like this is about being a little bit more conservative and either waiting to get something at the right price, maybe getting something a little bit older. It could even mean that you're willing to do with something that's a little bit smaller, and make the necessary sacrifices to get something that's going to be more so financially affordable, right? That's how I kind of see it. So if your goal here is that you're hoping to move and do all of these things by the fall, I go, all right, well, you're going to have an eclipse that's going to be around September 7th. That's going to be in Pisces. And this eclipse is a part of your whole sign fourth house, which means whatever things that were seeded, intentions that were seeded under the new moon in Pisces that we had this spring, 6 months down the line, now they come to fruition. What I like about this eclipse is that it's ruled by Jupiter, your chart ruler, and it's going to be trining Jupiter in the 8th house of other people's money. So things like selling houses to be able to buy new houses should, in theory, go better. Qualifying for mortgages, getting better interest rates, having somebody who's willing to maybe even help you, right? A lot of Sag risings don't know this, but in the next year, some of you guys will either get into a relationship where you have somebody who wants to invest with you, or they want to move in with you, they want to help pay your bills, right? Or you're going to see that you'll inherit property or you'll inherit money, or there'll be some kind of windfall. Certainly benefits, bonuses, right? Cashing out on things that you've been investing in, that can happen. So this eclipse is quite lovely for your chart because it's trining your Saturn, it's also trining Jupiter. It does give you the opportunity to have a lot of stability on the home front. Now, does that mean something happens that day? Not necessarily. Usually you can see the events of eclipses setting up, 2 or 3 weeks prior. It could be up to like a month or so later, but that would be a time that I could see that happening. And then the other thing that's kind of cool is you've got Venus conjunct your moon. So that makes me feel like you're finding that, there's a space that you have found that's more luxurious and more comfortable. The other thing that I would take into consideration though is that Saturn is retrograde in your 4th. So a lot of Sag risings are going to feel like it's now or never. I got to make the move now, or I got to do something suddenly. And I would say not necessarily. You're going to have another period of time that could definitely pan out as a period where you're making like a purchase. And that's going to come up more in like January 2026, when you have a lot of planets going through your 2nd house of money, personal possessions, and income. This is all ruled by Saturn, and Saturn is now direct, and it's in your 4th house of home, and it's sextiling. So yeah, maybe you wanted to go in the fall, but I look at this and I'm like, you may have more cash at the beginning of the year, or, the market might be different. You're going to feel like you can buy more. And that kind of January into like March period could be very strong. You'll have a eclipse in your 3rd house, which could prompt moving by mid-February. And you will have a Mercury retrograde happening. It looks like the end of February, beginning of March of 2026. That's a time you're going to want to watch because, 7th house connection to Mercury is other people. So if, let's say, you got into a house too quickly, there's some issues with the house, you could be going back and forth with an attorney, 7th house ruler, you could be going back and forth with who you bought the house from. Or if you're still looking, the retrograde could actually work in your favor because of some of the aspects that it's making, and it can imply that basically January through about, let's say, April could be a decent time for moving. So you have a couple of different windows of opportunity. I have a hunch, though, with like Jupiter coming up on your moon next year, eclipses in opposition to your sun. There's some stuff here that makes me feel like you might be considering or contemplating places that are like much further away than where you currently live. Usually like in the 9th, whole sign is like, oh, well, could I go and do a stint in another country? Do I want to move across the country? Do I want to go to another part of the state? And there will be opportunities for you to start kind of thinking about that or sussing out other areas actually this summer. So I would look in some of the areas that you're interested in, like July and August. You can talk to realtors, you can see what's out there. And that might get the wheels turning and getting you to think about what other opportunities are out there that could allow you to move and also feel like you can really embrace some of the positive things connecting to your Leo 9th house moon. Those eclipses that are coming in the fall also make me feel that as well. Because you're going to have an eclipse that's not only going to be right on your sun, but then you're going to have that other eclipse that's going to be in opposition to your sun. And with the South Node going through your sun, there's a lot of like, well, am I willing to change jobs? Do I want to focus more on what's going on with my home base? Certainly the North Node in Pisces, and also like Saturn and Neptune being in your 4th house makes me feel like you're like, I can transfer, I can get a job anywhere, I can retire. There's so many things that I could do. I'm more focused on where am I going to be happy and like where am I going to find peace. And Pisces wants privacy, it wants beaches, it wants water, it wants a place that's going to be like super vibey. And for a lot of like late Scorpio risings and also like Sag risings, like you guys are still kind of going through some of these transits where you're still trying to kind of figure out where do you want to be. And I would prioritize that first and know that Jupiter in the 8th house is going to help you, or there's going to either be some kind of financial assistance, or you're going to find that there's going to be family assistance or something you're going to get that's going to make you go, okay, now I've got the finances to do this. Okay, now does this change ultimately where I'm going to potentially be looking, right? Anyway, so I hope that's helpful in giving you like some timelines. Definitely keep an eye on those eclipses in the fall. I think that's when you're going to see some major turning points. Good luck with your home search. All right, we got Maria and Coco and then Rosie, and I saw Victoria popped in there. I'll add you to my list. All right, Maria, let me see if I got you in here. Maria. And that was June 24th, 81. There we go. All right, so looks like I've got you June 24th, 81, 3:15 p.m. in Mexico City. Let me change that. And your Scorpio rising, Sun in Cancer, Moon in Pisces. And it looks like you have questions about the solar return. Where do you live? Houston? All right, so your solar return will be on June 24th, 2025, 7:08 a.m. And all right, so usually when I do like the solar returns, because they're pretty involved, like I'll just kind of give you some of like the big takeaways, because it takes quite a bit of time to like unpack these. But well, you've got a Cancer rising. Obviously, your sun is in Cancer, and you're also going to have your birthday the day that the sun and the Jupiter conjunction are happening. So that's pretty cool. 12 years ago, when we had Jupiter in Cancer, we didn't have the Sun-Jupiter conjunction. We actually saw the conjunction in Gemini. So we haven't had that in a while, and it's positive. So positive, I would say, is that you have your second house ruler of money, resources, self-esteem, conjunct, Jupiter, and it's in its exaltation. So this means that it's like a powerful year for, I think rebirths when it comes to your finances, when it comes to your confidence, when it comes to your creativity, when it comes to your joy, and opportunity for there to be kind of like financial blessings. Obviously at a 3, it's going to be like what you pray about, what you think about, what you write about. Are you speaking more positively? Are you more optimistic about some of the changes that are kind of coming in your life? Are you doing some like money manifestation and that stuff too? And the moon is the chart ruler here. And we've got the moon that's also in the 12th house. So there's a pretty significant 12th house focus with both of the luminaries and Jupiter being here. So usually when I see like sun in the 12th house, this is a year where we're taking a step back and we're kind of going like, all right, what needs to be wrapped up? What needs to be finished? Where do I need to spend more time in meditation, more time alone? What am I ready to kind of just like let go of? And that can be hard when you've got these planets in Cancer, because it's dealing with the past and like things that you can't control, home and family related things as well. I think with the moon being in the 12th house and the sun being in the 12th house, you need to go and pick like a quiet room or a closet space or a meditation corner or something that's going to be like your space, because what you're going to be craving is going to be like privacy and alone time. Sometimes this is like people saying, hey, I need to go to a retreat this year. I need to go to church. I need to start a meditation practice. I need to travel, right? It could be any of these things, especially with the moon in Gemini. There's going to be a sense of really wanting to take a step back and like reevaluating how you communicate with family and like expressing your emotions and your needs. And you might notice that you just need more rest or you need more sleep this year. The other thing that I think about is that you've got a critical point here on your midheaven, and you've got a critical point here on your IC. And there's going to be an eclipse that'll be the second half of September that's going to light this up like a Christmas tree, because the solar eclipse is going to be right on your IC. So it's going to basically be prompting, hey, there's some change that's getting ready to happen, on the home front or with my family, or some definitive turning point that you'll see kind of play out within about 6 months. Pay attention to that. That solar eclipse is going to be in opposition to your midheaven where you have Saturn. So on one hand, there's a sense of releasing, letting go of any, feeling overwhelmed or stressed out about home and family matters. And then on the other hand, there's like being more so tapped into Aries energy with Saturn and Neptune in your 10th. New career opportunities, being more assertive, maybe exploring doing something different professionally. Certainly there could be some pitfalls and challenges, communications with like superiors and also with like bosses and stuff. But I like the sun and Jupiter are conjunct, and that it's the ruler of the North Node in the 9th. So I would definitely say go on a retreat, go away, get some perspective, and come back. And likely it's going to help you navigate making the necessary changes that you need to make in communication, dealing with your family, talk about work, all that stuff. And even the rising degrees at a 12. I mean, it's just such a really strong 12th house placement that Maybe it's just me, like, you know, I'm in a 12th house annual perfection year right now. My solar return, I had the moon in the 12th house, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be terrible. But I've just found I just need a lot more sleep. And also just like, don't mind like hanging out by myself and doing nothing. And so I think a lot of it's just like not feeling bad by doing that, by needing to rest and taking downtime. The only other thing that I would say is your birthday is gonna happen when we're having a yod. So the sun and Jupiter, which is considered to be pretty lucky, is going to sextile Mars, which means because of some new emotional shifts or, you know, things that are coming in from that new moon around your birthday, it's going to incentivize us to take action, get organized, you know, Virgo things, in your case, maybe travel. And this is going to make an inconjunct or a quincunx to Pluto. So this might mean that, you know what, if there is a lot of, you know, restlessness or subconscious things going on or anxiety or stress, and you're just feeling like you need an outlet, walking, writing, traveling, learning, these things can help. Movement. I mean, like literally going for a walk or a bike ride or walking the dog will help. And also communicating. And it's a very powerful focal point, putting Pluto in the 7th house. I think you're going to be kind of telling people what's up this year and being like, you know what, I haven't said anything, but now I'm going to say something. And it's about really exercising your beliefs and your philosophy and being a little bit more direct and assertive with people, which in turn will change and transform your relationships. And it can also mean that this can be like relationships with siblings, because Pluto is at a 3, or extended relatives, and also Mars is in your 3rd house. So, you know, coaches, mentors, teachers, therapists, astrologers, people can come in and be that Pluto for you this year. That's just like, what are you afraid of? Like, tell people what you need and what you want, you know? And you'll feel the effects of Saturn and Neptune squaring you all year, but I feel like this is about letting go of any fears of not having enough, or feeling like financially, you know, you're kind of like, okay, things aren't going to work. What am I going to do? When in reality, you know, taking a step back and like not being so focused on work could actually be really good. If you've got a job that is good and you like it and you've been doing it for a little bit and it's sticking, great. You can put things on cruise control a little bit and make sure that, you know, you're showing up to work, you're doing what you need to do, but you're getting your rest in and you're taking care of your mental, emotional health, and you're really exercising some of those boundaries with people this year, making sure that you're being heard. So hopefully that's helpful for you. Happy almost birthday. We've got Coco and then Rosie and Victoria. And we're going to call last call soon if you guys want to get in. Coco, remind me, it's December 1st, right? I just want to make sure this is you. I'm pretty sure it is, yeah. Pisces rising, sun in Sag, moon in Capricorn. How's it going? All right, she says, where is she? There we go. General look. It's in my sun sign. Looking at money and love. Lawyer sent my ex-employer settlement negotiation. Most interested in that. Guy I was talking to for 8 months ghosted. Blue song. Oh. All right, well, let's take a look here. So certainly the full moon being connected to your Mercury is kind of a big deal. I mean, the full moon is going to be within a degree of your Mercury. So from a Placidus standpoint, this is much more about like legal things. You know, it's going to be about what's kind of going on with like lawyers, 9th house. Agreements, settlements, especially because it's making trines to Mars, and the 6th house can be about like settling things out and like trying to kind of wrap it up. And then Mercury is going to represent partnerships, you know, therapists, sure, relationships, and it's connected to the South Node. So it's saying that other people are going to play a role in kind of clearing out some of the relationship karma. If you feel like you've been done wrong by an employer, South Node in Virgo, you know, then this is about the legal negotiations that are taking place and the change of circumstances that's happening revolving around that. Also, you're going to have the moon square the North and the South Node. So it's a pretty significant turning point for you when it comes to making some public statements, or, you know, making some moves professionally, or, you know, applying to places, talking to people, like being seen. Like this is a really powerful transit for like visibility. Obviously Mercury also represents relationships, but I think this is more kind of you going like, you know what, If somebody's not communicating with me, I'm going to let them go. I'm going to cut it loose, and I'm going to, maintain my position where I'm open, but not for people who are not, willing to kind of like show up for me. Moon's also going to trine Mars, which is great for work, health, and habits for you. And it's also going to come into a slight trine with Chiron in the first house. So to me, this feels like working, moving, shaking, like getting things done. The other way that I look at this is that there is going to be a grand mutable cross. Okay, so it does mean that there is some changing circumstances in terms of your professional life or your status that is really making you focus more on your needs, being willing to make the necessary changes at home, and also in turn seeing some big changes in relationships. So that's a full moon that's going to pack quite a punch. Obviously, Sagittarius, sun, you're going to hear, changes with your physical appearance, changes with your body, emotional changes because Jupiter is 8 signs away. But this is more pertaining to your private life, your home, your living situation, or your family. So I'm wondering, like, what's going to happen here? Are you traveling back home to visit family? Somebody coming to stay with you? Certainly Mercury and Jupiter meeting in your 4th house makes me feel like there could be romantic opportunities for people, coming in from the past. But with that square to Saturn and Neptune, you don't really look like you're interested in entertaining people who are kind of in and out and back and forth. That's kind of the vibe that I get. Cash in hand, money that you get, is going to be more tied to Mars. So watching Mars come into a square with Uranus tells me it's going to take a little bit longer to see the money kind of come through. Probably when you start seeing Mars come out of the quincunx and the inconjunct with Saturn and Neptune, there's going to be better likelihood. And we need to see it making an aspect also to your natal Mars. So kind of feeling like I'd keep my eyes open here, like July 5th and 6th. I'd also keep my eyes open when Mars is coming into your 7th house and it's reactivating the eclipse, which is going to be around the end of July. And then maybe, this is really pushing it, but you're going to have Mercury retrograde in your 8th house. And that's connected to the South Node. And that's going to be in November. So that could mean, okay, if money's owed to you, it's getting sorted out, it's going through the lawyer's getting paid, the lawyer's then sending you the check. That could be like November of this year, especially because it's going to trine Jupiter. So those windows seem to be most prominent, and probably, I would say, the full moon that's going to be in Aries. So October 6th and then the November 5th full moons, those are tied to like your money houses, and you're going to see some aspects in the sky that are going to be made to like Jupiter as well as Saturn. So I would say definitely in the fall, I could see you getting paid. But right now, it almost looks like there's much more focus and emphasis in like, okay, I'm talking to my lawyers. What's going on? Do I need to be, traveling? What do I need to be signing? Like, it's more going to be communication and like travel related or things that are going to be legal related. But definitely Uranus, I think, getting ready to change signs and going out of Taurus and going into Gemini could also produce some significant changes that could be happening for you with money. So I'd be more excited about your Jupiter return, obviously. Maybe it's a little bit different as a Sag because it's 8 signs away from you, but your Jupiter return is kind of a big deal because you have very highly aspected Jupiter. Jupiter opposes all of your Capricorn stuff. So from my perspective, I look at this and it's like, all right, it's going to be all about what's going on with home and living situation stuff or family stuff. And it's also opening the door for new romantic relationships as well as like new hobbies and creative things that bring you a lot of joy. Be careful with those Jupiter transits in your whole sign 5th and eclipses in your 1st house. Those are transits that I see when people get pregnant, because now it's like all the emphasis that's in the 10th house, the 11th house is now getting flipped on its, on its axis. So now it's kind of like, you've done a lot of this, now we're going to do some of that. So definitely changing home, expanding home, spending time with family, connecting to relatives, these things can be good. But yeah, between the Mercury retrograde and the eclipses that you're going to have, there's definitely some pregnancy vibes in that chart. So you've been warned. But it could also be a new project or a new relationship, Anyway, I hope that that's helpful for you. All right, I've got Rosie. And I know some people are kind of popping in saying, I'll be here and I'll be gone. So let me see. I'm not sure who it was. Good luck, Coco. All right. Rosie. I want to make sure. Rosie, are you here? If you are, I want to make sure I have the right one. I left my job today, so I want to check that I made a clean break. Can you tell if anyone is following me online in person too closely? Any legal inquiries about me? Peace and light. Thanks for sticking tonight's live and being here on Friday. Well, you're welcome. Yeah, you can come back unless you're here, Rosie. Let me know. Oh, there she is. Do I have the right one? New Jersey 84? Okay, different Rosie. Sorry, I don't always save last names because sometimes people don't want it on the internet. Let's see. There we go. All right, so Rosie quit her job today. Congrats. What's going on? Well, Venus is coming into square with Pluto. Venus rules your 10th house, and the Libra moon is right at the tail end here. So it looks like maybe it was like Moon conjunct Pluto coming into an opposition with Venus. You're just like not feeling it. And what's going on with your natal Venus? Oh, Uranus is squaring your natal Venus. There you go. So for Capricorn rising, you know, Uranus getting ready to go into Gemini is like, oh, okay, you know, now we're going to have a sporadic schedule, or there's going to be some kind of change or something that's going to be happening with work. And you've also got the Sun, which rules changes in conjunction to Mercury and Jupiter. That could have done it, you know, a final turning point in regards to like a career matter and feeling like something's got to break. And that's all coming into a square with Saturn. Communication issues, scheduling issues, issues with staff. I mean, I don't know particularly what was going on, but I could see that. At least today, the moon in the final degrees in your career house was trining Jupiter. And it's like, I'm finding that when the planets are hitting 29 degrees, people are like, that's it, I can't do it anymore. And it's in preparation for the fact that, you know, Saturn, Neptune, it's about to be Uranus, it's about to be Jupiter. Like, all these planets are going into new signs. Mars is on your moon, so you're also a little testy. So I don't know, did you have this planned? Like, were you planning on making a change? Mars on your moon, squaring Uranus. So I kind of feel like this is also, you know, the North Node hitting your Sun, where you're like, I just need a change. Like, and communication seems so important to you. So I can see why some of these things are playing out. I'll tell you that when you have a really positive transit involving your Venus, either transit Venus or natal Venus, that's when you're going to see some changes going on in the career department. You know, this year, between now and the new year, Pluto is going to continue to square Pluto. So if you're feeling like, hey, too many power struggles at work, not really vibing, I'm not liking what's going on with bosses, you know, there's people who are too combative or too toxic, that makes sense. And transit Venus is now going through Taurus, so that's going to be good. Sun is going to be in conjunction to Jupiter and also, you know, Mercury to some extent still. So if you're looking for a part-time gig, another job, you know, if you want to go and do interviews, you've got that. That's all going to be trining your midheaven. But to me, this feels a little like burnt out, you know. Planet is checking, weird question for me, checking if they'll come back with complaints. People spying on you is going to be more connected to the Mars transit on your moon. So it might mean that just intuitively, because you're an 8th house moon, that you kind of feel like when people are like looking at your stuff or kind of like watching you. And, you know, Uranus is now coming out of a square with Mars. There's certainly some people that are a little miffed. I think maybe that you left, and maybe they were kind of like, oh, you know, and now there's going to be a need for them to kind of like reorganize or reorient things. Mars square Mars and Uranus. That's funny. But do I see people kind of looking at your stuff? Not right now. I think if there was people looking at your stuff because Mercury is connected to coworkers, I'd be more looking at, and probably what you're going to do, because Saturn's about to square Mercury, this is about you kind of like locking things down and making things more private. I'm not saying you have to put any of your accounts on private or that you have to hide things, but Saturn and Neptune in the 3rd house is like shielding social media, being careful about what you're posting, what you're sharing, what information is public, or like you might go through and like kind of change some things or like get rid of some people or change some settings, making it more difficult for people to see what you've got going on or what you're doing. But my guess is if somebody's going to be peeking around or prying, it would come from Venus squaring Pluto, which is going to be closer to June the 9th. And then you're also going to see when Mercury goes into your 8th house and it starts opposing Pluto. And that actually could be about people trying to kind of get some insider information about what you're doing or what's going on. And that would be like the second half of July. But I'm not really seeing it right now. I kind of feel like, okay, if you pick today to be your last day and you're out, certainly, yes, people are miffed, but I don't really see anybody searching for anything right now. And I don't see anything coming up that's like legal oriented either. You know, Mercury will go retrograde in your 8th. It's going to be tied, obviously, to Mars in your 9th. So I'd be more watching, end of July to see if there's anything kind of coming back. But I don't really see any problems, to be honest with you. Maybe the eclipses in the ninth house in the fall could bring something up, especially because there's going to be a solar eclipse there. But I think this is going to be more about you working with new people or potentially like creating a new schedule, especially as Uranus is going into your whole sign 6th house. I think the way that you're working and like the types of jobs you're going to be doing or the lifestyle that you're trying to set up for yourself or even the location of where you're going to be working is going to be very different. So you're needing to allow yourself a little bit more time and flexibility to kind of find something that's going to work, right? Yeah, like legal complaints or spying into my home. No, I'm not really seeing that. Once again, I would be more concerned with what's going on in July because Mercury is going to be connected to coworkers. It's going to retrograde in the 8th house, which could mean privacy issues. It's going to then come into a square with Saturn, which is going to be about people you've worked with. And Mercury is going to be tied to the South Node Mars, which could be legal matters. So I would say you're fine now. It's going to be more July. Right? So sometimes I would think of like Mercury as being things connected to security, especially in the 8th house. So if you feel like worried about it, tightening up your media security, maybe feeling like if you need to do anything that's going to kind of secure your home or if you want to put like a doorbell camera or something on there, you can. But I'm not seeing anybody like really hanging around your home or your property right now. Saturn and Neptune is conjunct Mercury. And I think maybe this is more tied to media more than it is your physical like home. Right? So hopefully that's helpful for you, Rosie. So we're calling last call for readings. We're going to close those down. And then once I take Victoria, we will move on to the rest of the people on my list. What's up, Victoria? She says, new job. Earthship money. I start next month. Plus, I have a different new project for Prism curriculum with a totally different company. Uranus is working magic. Peep my solar return chart this year. Solar return chart has Pluto in the 4th house. Solar return ascendant conjunct Pluto. I'm not moving, but I am changing. My first job in 13 years. What else could the Pluto focus be? What is the city that you're using for your return? Isn't it Texas? Let's see. No, probably not. So Pluto, you'll have to let me know where it is for me to look at that. What's up, Danielle? Welcome. All right, well, I'm waiting for Victoria to let me know where that solar return is. Let me pop over to the readings and let you guys know who I have. Houston. Okay, so it was Houston. So I have your solar return here, April 4th, 2025. Houston, Texas. Gives me Libra rising, 28 degrees. So when you say Pluto on the ascendant, you're speaking to natal Pluto. Okay, because I was like, wait, what? Yeah, I mean, so here's the thing, right? So whenever you have natal planets that return to like an angle, that's going to be a much more significant year. You're going to see things are just going to be a little bit louder. So Libra rising solar return is going to put an emphasis on balance, harmony, relationship. Well, this is at a 28, so it's emotionally within the home, family, or domestic space. This is going to put a huge emphasis on Venus. So if you look at the chart, you had Venus going retrograde during your birthday, during your solar return. And it started its retrograde in the 6th, and it was retrograding into the 5th, which basically means you're readjusting your schedule, readjusting maybe what it looks like to work or be in a home space or in a creative space or in an office space. It also has Mercury involved, so it's about working with a new company or a team. And honestly, like Moon and Mars are also tied to learning, traveling, instructing, publishing. Yeah, all of this stuff is trining it. So this is about kind of navigating some of these more work and kind of, career-related things more intuitively. But onto your Pluto-Saturn on the ascendant, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to move per se. Saturn is connected to your second house, right here. And it basically means that you're committing more to changing and transforming. And I think like reinvesting in yourself or focusing on how you can bring in more. You've also got your natal Mars in the 7th. So that's great for clients, working with people, new relationships, partnerships. And then you have got the moon coming into the natal moon into conjunction with the IC. So sure, you may change, your homes might change, your relationships might change. Everything's kind of ricocheting off of everything in this chart. But the solar return to me looks like it's like about health, scheduling, work, and routine, and like finding something that's going to feel like more fulfilling and like happy and like some kind of creative thing that's like emerging and feeling like you have more independence in your, your creative, things that you're doing, right? Sun in the 6th house, the only thing I would say about that is that like, yeah, you're going to have much more of like a rigid routine, and like productivity and sticking to timelines is definitely going to be like a huge emphasis, and making sure that you're getting the job done. And I would say moving, I think this is just more about you reevaluating your finances, and it might mean that you're like, hey, now I have more power and resources when it comes to home. Does that mean I want to change my home? You got to look more at Uranus for that. So because Uranus is sextile Venus and Saturn, likely the changes that are going to happen are more emotional, or it's going to be more as a result of like relationship opportunities that pop in. And Uranus is also trining the South Node. So it means that it'll give you the opportunity to clear old relationship karma or friendship karma, or, you'll be able to consider changing where you're living or how you're living if new relationships or communities or people kind of come into your life, right? It's kind of hard not to be focused on health. If your sun's in the 6th house, and especially when it's exalted, it's going to put an emphasis on health, but also knowing that all of those planets went retrograde from Aries back into Pisces for a whole sign Libra rising, it's like, where am I prioritizing health and productivity, If there were to be a move, you might hear that it's first prompted with travel related things, because I know Mercury is going to retrograde right on the midheaven here and oppose Pluto, so it's getting you out of where you're used to being, and you're going to find that July and August is probably going to be pretty busy. And then you'll see a whole flood of planets go through this part of the chart, end of January, beginning of February, 2026. So especially when you're talking about like wanting that new home environment, or you're wanting the money for like earth ships. This is literally money to have a futuristic, transformative home and living situation. For all you know, it might mean that you're not moving, but you're starting to put the wheels in motion financially to make that possible for you come the beginning of next year. And you could see yourself thinking about, okay, I'm not going to be, building yet, but do I want to buy somewhere? Do I find a community or a place that I want to be? And that starts the process of you starting to put forth some of the resources to, bring that together. Focus on health and yoga routine, because criminal defense is mentally harsh and justice is fighting. Yep. Especially with like Pisces, a lot of this is something that's like fluid. So yoga, meditation, Pilates, swimming, anything that's going to be connected to like stretching and like getting more so like into your like emotional body, I would say, with like Pisces being the whole sign 6th house ruler. And that there will be a change that's going to happen where there's more of a focus on mind, body, spirit balance rather than, oh, just like strength or fitness. It's definitely more going to be emotionally related. And those trines to Mars also tell me that it's a good year to like take classes, to, you know, be bringing in new teachers, coaches, mentors, be traveling also for health or wellness. That could also be something else that can kind of pop up for you. And you're going to see there's going to be a significant amount of like traveling opportunities that are going to start happening in July or in August. That's when it's going to start getting pretty active because all that stuff is squaring the 6th house. So it's like, well, how do you maintain some of those things if you're going to have a little bit of a busier schedule, but definitely good problems to have, right? Hopefully that's helpful for you. All right. Did I have any other level 3 people? Did I miss anybody? Just want to make sure I did not miss anybody. If you guys are still watching this, if you haven't already, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Readings are now closed. Let's see. So we had some other people that kind of popped in here. So I might actually plug some of these in so we can just kind of keep going through them. Oops. Sorry, guys. So let me see who I've got here. Where did I leave off? Liss, Kimberly. All right. So this is who I've got left. So Katie J, Heart of Moana, Raina, Kelly, Kimberly, Liss, Hassini, Michelle. Let's see. Braden, am I saying that right? Looks like, let's see. I don't know who Valerie Green is, but if you want to send the difference for your reading, let me know. And I also have Blossoming Newborn Care. There we go. Okay. And Cassidy. All right, so Valerie, let me know. I can send you a refund. It's $55 US for a reading. So let me plug these charts in, and then we'll do everybody at the same time. Because that'll probably be an easier way to go. So let me plug a couple of these people in. It'll just take me a minute. And we'll go from there. Okay, thank you. Do I have Michelle's birth information? I didn't see if she sent it or not, but divine time. I use my location, and I'm looking at the natal location of where you were born, but I'm looking at it from my time zone. Is Michelle here? Michelle, I need your date of birth information, please. right, I'm just hoping that we can hear back from Michelle, because I don't know if I have your chart and you did not send me your birth information. Let me see, do I have you in here? I don't want to assume I do, so putting it out there, Michelle, send me your birth information, please. I got your question and your payment, and then also Valerie, if you send the payment before your name comes up, I'll take your reading. All right, so we have Katie J. I know there's a couple of Katies in here. Heart of Moana, and then Raina. You guys are all going to be first. Thank you guys for your patience. Let's take a look at Katie J. All right, so Katie says 5/15/98, Albuquerque, New Mexico. All right. Completely changing my life by the end of this month, moving in with family to be able to work on business and travel. Wondering as I make this shift if there's anything that stands out regarding investment from others, whether that be a new collaborator for my business or someone wanting to invest, or just new connections in general that enhance my business and the ability to travel. I want to expand. All right, thanks, Michelle. Well, I like that a lot. I think that some of the transits that are kind of going on right now are interesting. When you talk about other people's money, that's more going to be kind of connected, obviously, to your 8th house, be that, you know, Mercury transits or transits to your natal Mercury, and you've kind of got some sweet and some salty aspects. So sweet, I would say, you know, as a Scorpio rising, you're going to have Mercury come into conjunction with Jupiter this Sunday, okay? So Jupiter is your money and resources. Mercury is going to be other people's stuff. So there can be some turning point, some opportunity for something to come your way. It's a quick moving transit, but hey. The other thing that you're going to want to watch is also going to be Uranus going into Gemini, which is going to happen in July. And that's where suddenly there's, you know, new opportunities to, you know, innovate when it comes to your resources, your savings, your investment, all of that stuff. Maybe right around the beginning of July when Venus comes into conjunction with Uranus, that could be another money-making, new relationship, new client opportunity. And Uranus is actually kind of trining Pluto. So I actually feel like this is more about the opportunity to really get ahead through, you know, having somebody cover costs or living with family, because Uranus rules your home, and then it gives you the opportunity to radically like transform something about your home space, finances as well. Jupiter is going into the 9th house, which means, yeah, you would much rather spend your money on traveling this year. And it's squaring Saturn and Neptune. So it means you got to get creative. There's new business ventures. You're having to also focus on scheduling, dedication, commitment. I think just being a Libra rising who's coming out of the Saturn Neptune in the 6th square Jupiter in the 9th, I have recognized and realized that there were some things that I was like, if I want to do this, I have to make the time to do it. And if I don't make the commitment, if I don't create the schedule, if I'm not consistent, it's not going to happen. And a lot of that was also me being incentivized through traveling, you know, going places, learning things. So whether it's planning travel, you know, balancing work, focusing on health, like that's going to be the theme that you're really going to see in June. And then later in the year, you'll see Jupiter start coming into a trine with Saturn. So if you're focusing on some of your creative endeavors, like I would say definitely, especially come like September, October, you know, things start kind of improving. Gemini season in general is when you're most likely to see something coming through. Maybe a little bit in July when Venus is there. And then there will be another kind of money-making opportunity more through other people when Mercury, your 8th house lord, turns retrograde in your 2nd house and it comes into conjunction with Mars. So this could be a creative collaboration, money coming your way, getting paid for something, having an opportunity to have a financial breakthrough right around mid-November. So that's going to be like the 11th through like the 20th. Definitely watch your expenses and your spending then is something else I would say, but it's not the end of the world. Especially, it's funny for a Scorpio rising, this is about changes in your personal resources and funding. And then also for a Taurus, it's going to be 8 houses away. So you've got it both ways. So there's definitely going to be some flip-flop. I would say the goal here is to like, yeah, travel, work, save money. So that way by the time you're getting to November, you're going to have more money and you're going to feel like if you want to travel more, if you want to make some professional kind of shifts, or if you want to focus on having more fun, you can do that depending on how your expenses are going. And then all year long, this is the salty, I kind of said all the sweet stuff, but you do have Pluto, which is your chart ruler, squaring your Mercury. And this means that through your own personal change and transformation of the way that you think about home and family, maybe it's moving back home, you know, especially conjunct Neptune to do creative stuff. And because it's squaring Mercury in your 6th, it's like, okay, you know, I still have to stay on task, or I still need to be working, or I still need to be creating. And there can be some uncomfortable money conversations that can happen. But I think this is going to be more like in a relationship sense, because Taurus is tied to your 6th, or if you have clients and you're trying to talk about fees and expenses, that kind of stuff for services. And this represents the home of your family. So you may kind of feel like with Mercury square Pluto, you're like, I don't have a lot of privacy, or, you know, are they listening to, you know, some of my conversations with people, or are they kind of getting involved in my financial business? You know, you might feel like there's like a little bit more pressure or prying there. But definitely not the end of the world. I think that you've already kind of gone through the thick of it. And it looks like the first square that you had is what incentivized you to go, I'm going to move back home. I'm going to, you know, I'm going to make the change that I need to make for the time being. And probably what you'll find is when the eclipses start hitting in Aquarius, it'll start the beginning of next year in like February. It can set the stage for being like, okay, I've been home for so long. Do I feel like things are actually rocking and rolling? So if I do want to make a move, I can. And that'll kick off what'll be 6 months between February of 26 and like, you know, the summer of 26 to determine whether or not you're going to, you know, move out of the house, or if there's like some relationship stuff that could be set off from the Uranus square to that eclipse in February. So it's likely you might meet somebody too. So we'll have to see what happens. Certainly Saturn hitting your Venus next year is going to be big for commitments in regards to your schedule, your health, but also your relationships. And it's possible that that's when you start working with somebody that you're either you have a business partner, or maybe you're dating somebody, like Venus ruling your 7th and the 6th, like you will work somehow, or you'll meet somebody through work. So I would be watching for that like closer to next spring. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Congrats on expanding. Be optimistic. It's going to work really, really well for Scorpio placements and Taurus placements as well. It's all just about communication and connection. All right, we've got Heart of Moana. Am I saying that right? I want to make sure I'm saying that right. I was like, am I reading this wrong? But congrats on the name change. I like it. So Katie Capricorn says, January 9th, 73. My mother is stage 4 cancer, not a candidate for treatment. Wow, I'm really sorry to hear that. I'm curious if there's an indication in my chart. I know it can't be 100% certain, but I'm trying to have an idea of how long she'll be with us. On a lighter note, if you see indications of anyone coming back from the past, I want to know. Thank you. No stress. I trust your intuition. You've always been accurate with my readings. Let's take a look. So one thing I want to say is that I always tell clients this, because I always get asked some heavy stuff. Like, I'm not God. I don't have their chart in front of me. It's going to be harder to kind of determine just looking at your chart, but I can see some stuff. So if the 4th house is connected to the family and the mother, right? I've actually found that the 7th house cusp, both the cusp by the degree as well as the ruler, is going to play some kind of a role in sometimes, obviously, death or transition of parents. Okay. So something I'm thinking about is like, well, you know, you have Jupiter that is going to be sextiling Mercury, which is the ruler this year. You have already had the South Node go over this. Mars still has to go over this, and you're going to have eclipses. Your North Node Moon transit also in the 12th house could be about like mom receiving assistance, care, could be resting more, sleeping more. It's at an 18, so it does deal with like health stuff. It can be about hospice related things as well. I get the feeling that when you start seeing these transits, I would be paying attention. All right. So when you have Mars coming up on your descendant, okay, obviously this is soon, but still, I'm just going to tell you, right around July 28th, okay, because South Node Moon can mean about like loss of, you know, like mother. It could also be with Mars connecting, you know, physical breaking down, health-related matters, illness. And then you're also going to want to watch because Mars will be reactivating the eclipse that we just had recently. And then there is going to be another eclipse that's going to happen in Virgo right along those degrees. So when you have the solar eclipse in your 7th house, very close to your Pluto, out of 4, home and mother, it will oppose Saturn, and that could represent some kind of separation. It is friendly with some of the other things in your chart, but basically the end of July through the end of September is when I would be really just watching what's going on with her health, just because of those particular degrees. And what you'll see is the ruler of this eclipse, Mercury, is in your whole sign 8th. So it's going to be about conversations and discussions about, okay, you know, if for whatever reason you were to lose her, what does she want you to know? What is she telling you? What is she saying to you? How much time are you spending with her? And also, this is a solar eclipse that'll play out for 6 months, you know, so it doesn't mean something's going to happen right then and there. You're going to want to watch what's going on with Mercury transits, but certainly if she starts talking to you like, okay, I want you to have this, or this is what my plan is, or this is what I want, or I want to talk to you about, you know, estate stuff, that can come up. And then it'll be next year that you will have Saturn in your 1st house squaring Mercury. And it's going to be in Aries. So there's a lot of like, well, who am I without this person? Okay. And that could be a parent, that could be a relationship, something like that. And that's going to be coming up like April of next year. So certainly your progress chart and other things will kind of say some things too. My guess is that if you're going to hear from somebody from the past, you know, maybe Sunday, Mercury conjunct Jupiter, maybe. But there's nothing really kind of going on. Maybe Jupiter in opposition to your Mercury. I think that's much more likely. And that'll be in early July. So obviously for Pisces rising, oh, relationship opportunities, romance, creativity, great. But it's in your 4th house. So people from the past who are reaching out to you from afar, out of 7. So I'd be looking at mid-July maybe. And also Mars coming in conjunction with South Node, I mean, that could mean people you've worked with before, people that you had some kind of romantic connection with in the past. And Mercury will also retrograde in your 5th house, Placidus. So you could hear back from people from the past as well. Usually, you know, when you see some really like heavy stuff going on, you'll see it reflected in the progress chart. So if you look at this, your 4th house is ruled by the sun. And it looks like the eclipses are going to be on the sun. The North Node's coming up in conjunction with the sun. That's going to reference more of a focus on like a father figure. So I don't know if your dad's still around or if you have a stepdad or somebody else, but there might be more focus on that relationship. And the North Node's coming into conjunction. The sun is coming into a square with Saturn. See, there it is. So the sun rules family. It's out of 12, so it can be about something breaking down. It's squaring Saturn, so it's going to be about you being like, how is this impacting my beliefs about home and family, or about what I believe in, or what I can or cannot do. And you are coming into like a new moon phase, so this like breaking down of, I'm changing my business, I'm changing my name, there's stuff changing with mom, there's stuff changing with responsibility. That's all a part of coming into this new moon phase, which will still square Saturn for... I mean, the sun's going to square Saturn for the next year. So it is looking like you both feel the responsibility for being there to support a family member, but also for showing up for your job and these changes with your professional life. But likely you'll see a pretty significant turning point, I would say, especially like come next summer. And then you'll be coming into like the new moon phase, the beginning of 2027. So usually when you're in this, stuff is getting stuff's winding down. Let's just say that, before it's getting ready to kind of start back up. And then you can look at that in comparison to the natal chart and a bunch of other things. But I think that, let's see. So your progress sun and your progress moon is going through your 12th house. That could also be part of what's going on with mom and like illness related things. And then Mercury is sitting on the ascendant, and Saturn and Neptune is there. So being more compassionate and communicating with your mom about how she's feeling and what she needs, and kind of being there to hold space for her. That, to me, seems like what's really significant. And the fact that the eclipse is going to be, you know, on your descendant in opposition to your Mercury, it's going to be you kind of saying, okay, at the end of, you know, let's say the summer into the fall, if she needs you, she calls you, you know, you want to be there for her, likely you're going to be more willing to kind of go and do some of that stuff. And that's also, you know, Jupiter in your 4th house. Even though you're Pisces rising, it's very much going to be about Jupiter in your 4th house. It's going to take on the themes of, like, you know, Aries rising. So the focus and the importance of communication with home, relative, and family, and responsibility of that as well. Lots of good thoughts for your mom. Hopefully that's kind of helpful in helping you navigate this stuff, and sending you lots of love. All right, we got Raina, Kelly, and then Kimberly. You're welcome. What's up, Raina? 9:17, 78, 12:16 a.m. Hey Candace, do you see someone coming into my life, a serious relationship? I've been single for some time now, or my chart shows that I would be single forever. Well, let's take a look. So Cancer rising, Sun in Virgo, and your moon is in Aries. Why do I feel like there's been a couple, I have a close friend who's a Cancer rising, Aries 10th house moon. I've seen a lot of the Cancer rising, Aries moon with Saturn and Neptune going over the moon, and you guys are like, am I going to be alone forever? You're the moon. Okay, moon in the 10th house, Aries, independent, fierce, kind of doing your own thing professionally or in terms of your status, being seen as single. And Saturn represents relationships. So believe it or not, you know, Saturn hitting your moon is a very important transit, because it can represent a significant turning point where you're like, you know what, that's it. I don't want to be alone. I've always done this, but I don't have to. It doesn't need to be like this. And Neptune is there as well. So it creates a little bit of like a blurring effect, a softening effect, being more emotional, more sensitive, more sentimental when it comes to relationships. And certainly as like a Virgo sun, you know, the North Node being in Pisces, and eclipses that are being activated in Pisces this year, Jupiter and Saturn being in Pisces this year, is a lot of like feeling that longing for relationships. So with a chart like this, I'm going to look both at your natal Saturn, which is in your 3rd house, conjunct Mercury. So there is some, maybe some shyness, which is not typical when you see Aries moon. You can be assertive and kind of direct and focused on, you know, your professional path. But when it comes to relationships, because you've got Mercury and Saturn in conjunction, there is more like a serious, stern, or a critical kind of tone when it comes to relationships, and like, okay, it's hard, or it takes work, or, you know, I'm not good enough. Like there's something there that's like kind of coming up. And this makes a square to Neptune in your 6th. So that can also kind of indicate that, you know, there can be some difficulties in scheduling or making time, or feeling like, you know, you have the energy or the wherewithal to balance your professional life and your dating life, or not being sure who to approach or communicate or connect with, especially if you were to like meet people in a professional setting, right? Just some food for thought. So is this a chart of somebody who's like destined to be alone? No, not necessarily. I think that because Mercury rules your 12th house of like what's hidden in the subconscious or self-undoing, and it's intercepted, so it gets swallowed up in your 12th house, so it's a blind spot, I'm going to tell you, you're going to miss 100% of the chances you don't take. So if there's people that you meet that you're like, oh, I really should like ask them if they want to get a drink, or, you know, strike up a conversation, or like whatever, most likely, if you don't do that, yeah, you're missing opportunities to potentially connect with somebody. I have another client who has the same conjunction in the 3rd house, and I kept telling her, I was like, you're gonna be walking home from work, you're gonna be driving home from work, or you're gonna be walking out of work and somebody's gonna approach you, or you're gonna be talking to somebody on the street, and like it's gonna be a relationship. And I've been telling her that forever. Finally, she was walking home from work. I think she's like somewhere in New York, and she struck up a conversation with 2 guys on the street, and then they started going back and forth, and they're kind of like having like a fling. So yeah, I would be going out with people from work. I would be, maybe going out for lunch, walking around, talking to people, being aware of your commute, even if you're not walking, if you're driving, because Saturn rules relationships, and it's in the 3rd house of your local community at a 6. So it's like going to or from work or to or from places with coworkers and communicating and talking to people. And you might meet people through work that have an interest in you and you would never know, or you would never say anything. Anyway, Saturn and Neptune are going to be on your moon all year. So the positive is that if you're serious about wanting to change your status, this is the time to do it. The negative is that if you get too independent, too fierce, too I don't need anybody, or I'm committed to being, or living life alone, you're going to miss out on some really significant opportunities, I think, to meet somebody this year. Probably, in my mind, I would be most focused on when planets are going through your 5th house. So like you'll have like a Mercury retrograde in your 5th house in November, good time to get back into dating and meeting someone. Mars will be conjunct your Venus. That's great, especially with trines to Jupiter. And that'll be pretty much end of October into November 2025. And then you're going to have also a stellium of planets going into your house of relationships. And this is going to be pretty prominent in Capricorn. And it looks like this is going to be starting up for you right after the new moon in Sag. So right after December 19th. And then these planets are going to go into your 7th house of relationships. They're going to Cazimi, which means Mars and Venus and the Sun will all be conjunct. And it's very prominent at the very first 10 days of January of 2026. So all of those times are significant. Many of my Cancer and Cancer risings, I tell them travel, meet people, go back and forth, date people who are culturally different or diverse in some way. Saturn and Neptune are whole sign 9th. Take classes, go and learn things, even if it's like art or creatively based. That'll also enhance with Saturn there, the likelihood of meeting someone, especially at the end of the year, going into the beginning of next year. And then you will see Saturn and Neptune trining Jupiter. I mean, that's going to be like November, until January. So that's also enhancing travel, communication, meeting people, learning things. And it can be that you're meeting, people, or you're traveling for work, or there's some kind of connection for connecting with people in other areas. So I would watch for that. And then the big theme is that, Aries 0 degrees is the first degree of the zodiac. It's the most potent degree, some would argue. So when Saturn and Neptune hit this, it's basically saying it wants you to initiate some new partnership, Saturn moon, emotionally connected. And Neptune is about being more open to different cultures. It's about being open to a different status. It's about being more, I think, receptive. And for Virgos especially, it's 8 houses away from your sun. So it's about vulnerability, making changes. You might find that if you have a job change or if there's a significant change in at work, that will also lead to there being like a relationship shift. Summer romance, not really. I'm not seeing that right now. I know June is a good month for flings just in general because of where some of the planets are. But knowing that Venus, your 5th house ruler, is going to be going through your 11th house, it's more about socializing in June, going out and meeting people. And then Venus will go through your 12th house. So my thought is maybe when Venus conjuncts Jupiter, but that's going to be mid-August. So if you're looking at summer, mid-August. But I think things are actually really going to heat up more pretty much, I would say, mid-September all the way until the new year. That's when you're going to see the most action, with some of the best actually being right around the end of December going into January, right? But I don't necessarily see this as like being alone. Just keep in mind that you have some aspects that's really trying to enhance and trying to get you to communicate and connect and like put yourself out there. So whether you're doing that online or you're doing that at work or you're doing that in social situations, as the South Node goes through there, it's trying to get you to kind of speak up and not feel so self-critical, right? Because Mercury, Saturn is like, oh, what if they, they're not interested or they don't want to talk to me or like whatever. No, it's trying to get you to tap more into all this Pisces energy, which is about like connecting with people on an emotional level and also meeting people in other places. A lot of Cancer risings this year, because Saturn and Neptune will go back into the 9th, can mean that you're meeting somebody who might live further away, or that you're willing to kind of expand your search optimization, or you're willing to look at people who are in other cities or in other places, or long distance relationships. Those can also present themselves as well. I hope that's helpful for you. Just think of it as now as like a once in a 28, 29 year, that if you want something, well, Saturn and Neptune are conjunct, granted that's not easy on your moon, if you're serious and you're assertive and you're direct and you're bold about, hey, I want this new status, you can make it happen, especially because it's trining your Jupiter. Confidence is key. All right, we got Kelly, Kimberly, and then Liss. You're welcome. Let's see. All right, so we got Kelly here. Hi Candace, had my solar reading done last year, and as you predicted, I got pregnant last fall and I'm due with my baby girl in 2 months. Her due date is 8/14, very close to my birthday, so I want to do another solar return for Tucson, Arizona. I was curious to see what the first year of motherhood looks like for me and maybe some insight on what the baby is like. Well, until we know when the baby is born, we're not really going to know much about the baby. So it's going to be hard to kind of determine. And you, if you're listening, you can let me know. Would you rather me look at the due date for the baby, or would you rather me look at your solar return? Because you can always come back and have me look at your solar return once we know when she was born. Or I guess the chart in general. I'm going to look at your solar return, because I think that's going to be a little bit more prominent personally. All right, so this is going to be for 2025. So I know your birthday is usually on the 23rd, but this year your solar return is actually going to be on the 22nd. Okay. So, as predicted, I'm telling you, like last year I predicted like 70 something babies, guys. Like it's like crazy. There are people that I'm like, you're gonna get pregnant, and they're like, no way. And then they come back and they're like, yeah, I did. So I don't know, maybe it's my North Node in the 5th house. You have a new moon birthday. All right, so you're gonna have the Leo sun, Leo moon, Leo rising, all here. Pretty powerful chart. Obviously the sun represents your drive, your energy, your vitality, your passion, all that stuff. So that being on the ascendant is like a year where you're very focused, and there's this fusion of the conscious and the unconscious, right? Moon connected to the 12th house, on children, romance, creativity, what you create, life. So the dispositor of the moon is the sun, the ruling planet is the sun, and it's all in the 1st house. At least you're going to have like a good head of hair this year, right? So that's something to look forward to. I think probably what's most interesting for me is that you have all of this square Uranus. So it means that there's something new that's being seeded. There's this new phase of life that's coming in, and it's definitely making your professional life kind of rock, rattle, and roll. Or there is this sense of you being like, okay, well, it's also bringing up a new status change. So that could mean, I'm not focusing on working, I'm doing the mom thing. Or, a change that's going to be happening with your relationship status as well. So if you go from being like, oh, I was, we're boyfriend and girlfriend, to we're engaged, or now we're parents, it could be that. I like also the fact that you have Venus and Jupiter in the 11th house. So I feel like that's making mom friends, especially in Cancer, and that's going to be about your goals revolving around your long-term plans evolve. I think what's challenging and what's difficult is having both the sun and the moon square Uranus is just how you're adapting and changing, and like the changes that are going on like with your body. Moon in the 12th house might mean some changes in your sleep schedule, but that's expected if you're going to be a mom. Mercury is connected to the South Node. It's also in the 12th house. So you might notice some mental restlessness, or I would say meditation practices, breathing exercises, anything that's going to be about body movement can actually be really helpful. And you do see Mars in the money house in opposition to Saturn and Neptune. So there's a lot of like having to spend money, having to pay for things, having to purchase things, and the back and forth, the balancing act that you're doing with another person about expenses. What you spend versus like what you save, or what you need versus what they don't have. So there's like a reckoning that's going to kind of come up revolving around this. Thankfully, Mercury kind of trines it, so you can get on the same page about your goals. And then the other thing is that, you know, Uranus in the 10th house is sextile Saturn and Neptune. So it can mean that, you know, because there is this dramatic change going on with your life and your status, there's more needing support and assistance maybe that's coming in from other people. So that could mean family's helping you, partners helping pay for things, you're dealing with insurance, maybe you're, you know, taking maternity leave, maybe you're tapping into, you know, saved resources. Pluto in the 6th definitely changes your routine. Health habits are important. And thankfully, you know, you see Pluto sextile Saturn and Neptune. So because your schedules and your routine is changing, it can be good for you. There could be a sense of like realizing that you're stronger, more capable of handling this and taking this on than maybe you thought. And it's funny because it's really all about you. Jupiter is really about the baby. And Jupiter is exalted in the 11th house conjunct Venus. So friends will come around, family will come around, people want to kind of like celebrate and stuff. But really, it's like all eyes are on you. So the fact that I think you're giving birth right before your solar return, maybe it's just going to be like, okay, I'm coming back home to myself. Like now, you know, nothing's inhibiting my body. Like now I can get back to me. And that can be the new moon phase that's coming in, that you're more focused on that and kind of adjusting to like motherhood. But yeah, gonna definitely take some photos this year, because I think the change and the transformation that's going to happen, you know, with your style, with your body, with your hair, it could also be just, you know, kind of like main character energy. I mean, this is if you weren't having a kid, I would be like, it's all about you. But because you're becoming a mom, it's this like new identity reset that's kind of happening on your ascendant. So also a fertile energy, I should say. So just keep in mind that because Jupiter and Venus are conjunct, and this represents your partner's feelings, you may very well get to like, you know, end of this year in December, you know, you could very well get to kind of like June and July of next year. And this could be another one. So you've been forewarned, but good luck with that. I hope you enjoy your birthday. It looks like you're going to have a lot of fun with friends and being able to kind of celebrate some of these new family things. And yeah, it looks like it's going to be a year of fresh new starts for you. All right, I've got Kimberly. And after Kimberly, we've got Liss and Hassini and Michelle. Kimberly says, this full moon is really close to my natal Venus. I haven't had any relationship prospects the last few years, hoping it brings a change. Sag rising, Sag moon, Scorpio sun. All right, well, let's take a look at this full moon. You're looking at the full moon. I'm looking at Jupiter, girl, but we'll look at the full moon. So full moon in Sagittarius, around 20 degrees. So good news is, yeah, it's conjunct your Venus, which means you could be getting a lot of like praise, appreciation, compliments. You could be spending a lot of time with female friends. You could meet people in a social setting. It's really kind of lighting up your Venus. So it's good for relationships. It's good for beauty. It's good for your appearance. But what I'm really focused on is that this is a full moon that's ruled by Jupiter. And Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, sitting in your 7th house of relationships with Mercury conjunct Saturn. So full moon completion, emotional release, letting go of, oh, you know, relationships have to be hard. They have to be difficult. Nothing ever works. Everything falls apart. And I get it. You have South Node Saturn in your 7th house. So, you know, there has been a lot of changes in relationships, and there has been some periods where you haven't had anything. But you have better aspects now. Jupiter is going to be still in your 7th house of relationships for a couple weeks, and it's in a better sign. It's also trining your sun, so that's going to be good for travel and having fun and creativity. You're also going to be seeing that Uranus is now no longer in an opposition to your Mercury, where maybe there's been some mental restlessness and issues revolving around relationships. And I think this is the full moon that brings a lot of attention and attraction in. And then I've got my eye on the new moon, which is going to be at the end of June, around the 25th. And that's going to be one of the best new moons all year, just in general, because you've got the moon in its home sign, it's at 4 degrees, it's conjunct Jupiter, And this is going to be right on your Saturn. So it's planting a seed basically for what do I want to change and transform? 8th house new moon in the Placidus 7th when it comes to relationships. What have I learned, you know, about past habits, and like now how can I kind of reset things and focus on strong committed relationships moving forward? I love that this one also trines your sun. I love that this is sextiling Mars, so it could prompt travel, new relationships. It is squaring Saturn and Neptune, so it's kind of like riding on some of the transits for like Capricorn rising, where if you're not getting out of the past, or if you're stuck in one place, or if you're not getting out of the house, you're not going to meet anyone. So it's pushing you out of the house. But this is actually going to be one that's going to be, I think, more prominent for setting relationship things up. And when you see a really strong transit to your natal Mercury, see, look, Mercury will trine Mercury here. We've also got Saturn that's still slightly trine Mercury. More things are likely to happen relationship-wise. So from here on out, from like 6 months on from the end of June, I think you'll see some relationship building. And also, you're going to have Venus will conjunct Jupiter. I mean, that's good for you as well. That could be mid-August. And I'm looking at the Mercury retrograde because Mercury's going to go retrograde right over your natal Mercury with Mars, which I think you'll be fine because you're born with Mercury retrograde, but still that seems kind of significant. So let's look at that. So Mercury will retrograde with Mars. That could mean somebody's coming back to you in November. They're reconnecting with you. Ruled by Jupiter, Jupiter's in the 8th. Or maybe you're finally healing and like letting go of past relationship issues. And then Mercury's going to retrograde. It's going to meet with the sun on top of your Mercury. So it's going to be seeding likely new karmic relationship matters. And then Mercury is going to meet with Venus around the end of November. Obviously, Venus is going to be a little bit debilitated. I know, but it's trining Saturn. So there could be something that's kind of building behind the scenes that could be more prominent. And then when we look at how these become like full moons, you're going to have a full moon right on your descendant around December. And then that new moon in Cancer becomes a full moon. And that's going to be in early January. Okay. I think putting it all together, you know, things get even better in the fall. Like, I'm not saying you have to wait that long, but certainly when Saturn is trining your Mercury, Uranus is no longer opposing it. I think that you're going to find October, November, December, there's more opportunities for relationships. And you're also coming into your Juno return. So that, I mean, really, if you have Juno and Venus in your first house, it's about being more so committed and devoted to yourself, being married to yourself, and like really focusing on that relationship you have with yourself. Mercury in your 12th house retrograde means that you bring people in that have mental health issues, or they have job challenges or health issues or issues, whatever. They hide. And likely you will find that, you know, one thing ends, or, you know, somebody processes something and then they kind of come back. So that's the one thing to watch for the next 6 months is like, are there people who are kind of hot and cold or back and forth? Hopefully not. But certainly you could see some of that with Jupiter hitting the south node. But usually Jupiter, especially exalted Jupiter hitting Saturn, means that there's going to be a little bit more strength and structure and bringing in partners or relationships that are going to be more so committed, or they're going to say, I'm looking for something that's commitment oriented. So I don't think you're going to see as much kind of like back and forth as what you would usually see. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Kimberly, I know that the transits are still good for Sag risings. You're just finally coming out of the last like Jupiter Saturn square. So you just got to get out there, girl. Don't get stuck at home. Go out and do things. All right, we've got Liss, and then Hassini, Michelle, and Braden. Let's see. Liss. All right, I've got Liss here. October 12th, 75, 8:10 a.m. Make sure that's right. Is it a.m. or p.m.? I just saw 8:10, so I assumed it was a.m. Let me know if that's correct. Libra rising, Libra sun, moon in Capricorn. Am I destined to be single forever? No. Challenging though, having all of that Libra in your 12th house. Certainly, I mean, from a Placidus standpoint,
you know, that means that there's a lot of like past life relationship stuff that you're working through. There are lots of secrets and things that could also be like losses that are kind of going on relationship wise. And your sun is very close to Mercury as well as Pluto. So all of that kind of wrapped up tells me that, yeah, there's going to be some challenges in relationships in a sense of, you know, either people hiding, working through things, working through some shadow issues. And all of this by sign is also in opposition to Chiron in the 7th house of relationships and Jupiter in the whole sign 7th house of relationships. So expansion and contraction, like periods where you're very much relationship oriented and then you're not. Really, Mars rules your relationships. And if you look at Mars, it trines your ascendant, which is good. A little too wide to be a trine to your sun. And let's see, it inconjuncts and quincunxes your moon. So it also makes like a yod. Mars and Gemini, it's like, you know, you'll meet people who are very intelligent. They travel. Maybe they're interested in law, philosophy, communications, like whatever. And I think what's been kind of happening is there's a couple transits that have been really kind of rocking and rolling in recent years. You know, eclipses the last 2 years in Aries and Libra maybe made you realize how much you want partnership. Even if something didn't quite show up, it's something that you want. Certainly with the North Node in your 5th house and eclipses happening there, you could definitely bring a relationship in, especially in the fall, like around mid-September. You are coming into your Chiron return. So it's pretty expected to be kind of coming face to face with, hey, there are some things that I need to be healing and kind of working through, especially when it comes to relationships and partnerships. And Chiron retrograde in the 7th at 26 is like whether or not you feel chosen by other people, if other people value you or if they invest in you or if they choose you. So this is like a really prominent time because this is that transit you go through kind of going into your 50s where it's like, okay, now it's time for me to really kind of heal this wound. So it can be a time where you may meet somebody that can be a healer or a therapist or an astrologer. Somebody comes in that talks to you about this and makes you realize like, hey, you don't have to stay here. You don't have to choose wounded people or you don't have to fix people. Because sometimes doing that actually in turn, like whether you're being their therapist or you're helping them or you're talking to them about their problems, like it's almost like you're taking too much on, right? Anyway, so you're in this basically for the next year. This particular transit I think is really prominent and we got to see something good happening with your Mars. Well, Jupiter is conjunct your Mars. It's saying communicating, traveling, learning, and connecting with people will help you meet people. It's brief, so it's actually leaving that conjunction now, but you know, Mercury and the Sun are going to be there. So opportunities for expanding business and travel, meeting people in other places is really kind of a theme for the next couple weeks. And you will see throughout 2025, especially when Saturn and Neptune retrograde back into Pisces in your 5th of dating, it's going to square Saturn. Excuse me, it's going to square Mars. Saturn and Neptune are going to square Mars. So there's going to be like a needing to practice, like seeing very clearly, especially if there's more than one person that pops in, or if there's younger people that pop in, or if you're meeting somebody who's at a distance, like it's trying to get you to really focus on, is there a good romantic connection here? Emotionally, are you invested? Like, does it feel like it's like the right person for you? And I think there's going to be a lot of back and forth about that in November. And then finally you'll come out of some of these squares and there's like a huge power up period that's going to happen in your chart where there's a lot of opportunities for dating and relationship shifts, especially in February, March of next year. You come through your your Chiron return, and then Mars shows up. So I'm really liking like spring of next year too. You know, Mars in your 7th house, Jupiter conjunct, or coming into conjunct with your midheaven, Venus conjunct your Mars, and then the South Node hitting your Venus in Virgo. That could also be bringing in some kind of like karmic soulmate connection. But yeah, it's a lot of transits happening at one time. And I would say a lot of my Libra risings, regardless if you're a 12th house Libra or not, you know, having Saturn go into the 7th house is a lot of like, am I capable of a relationship? I mean, I think that for a lot of you guys, you have to understand that Aries is the self, right? Even though the 7th house is relationships, it's the self. So for a lot of Libra risings, it's the relationship with yourself and how you're working on yourself and how you treat yourself and what you need and what you're looking for, and also how you're asserting yourself with other people. And if you're taking the initiative to go out there and meet other people, that's part of it. Saturn is just going to continue to keep sextiling your Mars. And whoever you end up being with, they're going to want to travel, they're going to want to learn, they're going to communicate, they're going to want to get out of town, they're going to do things. So it is really pushing you to go and make these necessary like health or lifestyle changes this and next year to be ready for that new relationship to come in. I think that because Mars trines some of your personal planets in Libra, it does not lead me to believe that you're going to be alone forever. I think because Mars also sextiles your Jupiter, that it is very likely that there is going to be other relationship opportunities that are going to come in with the Saturn transit the next year or two. And I would go and learn about your Venus in Virgo, because Venus in Virgo can be very sacrificial, or they can be really hard on themselves, or very critical, or they can have a tendency to do too much for other people. And definitely be keeping an eye on what happens when the South Node hits Venus, because there's something going on like next spring of 2026. South Node Venus, and then also Mars and Saturn going through the 7th house. So it can mean that, you know, a relationship can be on like a turning point, but it can also mean that that can be an activation where you're bringing in some kind of soulmate or somebody like karmic that's coming in. And there's so many transits happening in May of next year that it seems to be like a really prominent turning point for you. So hopefully that's helpful for you and giving you some insight. They always say wherever your 7th house ruler is, that's where you're going to meet people. And because it's in the 9th, you have to travel, study, learn, go places, go on long road trips, especially Mars and Gemini in the 9th. Be learning things like languages, or maybe even be connecting if you're like a client-based kind of business. Because this person's going to love to travel, they're going to love to talk. So you need to be kind of in those spaces and places where you're going to be meeting people who can do those things. Let me check one other thing here. Just look at your progressions really quick. And Uranus is coming into your progressed 7th house. So yeah, and also Jupiter's hitting Mars, which is now retrograde. That's also why you're seeing changes or relationships are stalling out, or they're taking a little bit longer. But I would be really watching when Mars comes into your progressed conjunction with Venus. So that looks like that's going to be around September of this year. So I know I'm throwing a lot of dates at you, but these are all times where you can see some things that can really be changing and evolving. And with Uranus still sitting in your progressed 7th house, it's like you might see more than one person show up between now and the beginning of next year. And then things start to stabilize once Uranus is fully in your progressed 7th house come April of 2026. Okay? Love that progressed Venus in Libra, though. That's really nice, especially with Jupiter trining that right now. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Liss, excuse me. All right, we've got Hassini, and then Michelle, and then Braden. All right, so we have got, let's see, is there a question here? There it is. September 23rd, 96. I got you here, Sri Lanka. I applied for a job in a different state. Will I get it? If I get it, I would have to move next month. Overall, will my financial situation improve? Well, that's 3 questions, my dear. Really, it sounds like what you're asking is, are you going to get the job? Because if you get the job, you know that you're going to move, and also you're going to be working, right? So all those things seem to be kind of tied to this. I got some, I'm kind of looking at this there's some stuff that's really about to kind of change gears here, very quickly. So, number one is Saturn and Neptune are still dancing on the most southern part of your chart. So as we get into the fall of this year, Saturn's going to retrograde back, Neptune's going to retrograde back. It's going to sit right on your IC, which in theory means that you might be potentially moving to a place that's foreign to you. So when you say a different state, I could definitely see you being in a different location, in the fall while that's happening. So that's one positive kind of influence with the move. 2 is that, you're not even in your Saturn return yet. So I don't know if you care about this, but next year, especially February until let's say May, Saturn's going to come into your 4th house, and that can indicate that you're actually moving back home. All right. Or that you're going and being closer to family, that there's home things that are going on, or maybe you're moving to another home or apartment. Saturn is in opposition to your sun right now. So it's almost like it's trying to get you to stay grounded in one place, and you're facing delays and setbacks or challenges being able to travel, move, or relocate. So that's working against you. And then your career is tied to Mercury, which is retrograde in the 9th. So what's about to happen is you're going to see that Mercury is going to conjunct Jupiter. So I would be looking for maybe some kind of good news coming in the 7th, the 8th, the 9th. You know, I mean, if you're applying for work because Mercury represents your career and it's hitting Jupiter, it could be somebody saying, hey, we've got news for you, right? But it's going to square Saturn and Neptune, which means, hey, you're going to have to move. So it's looking like that you're going to get some kind of heads up that most likely I think you will get the job. And it's going to require you to make the necessary changes. And then all of a sudden, the stuff's going to start squaring your Sun and your Saturn. Where you're going to go, okay, well, I got to do it. This is going to be challenging, but, you know, this is the opportunity. And for Sagittarius risings, this is in your whole sign 8th house, which means opportunity to make more money and also change with the home. All right. So something else that I was thinking about is when Mars hits the South node, it's right on top of your Mercury. So even if there's a delay or there's a setback, there will be another opportunity to segue, make changes, or have them come back around for another opportunity, another meeting, you know, discussing taking a job. And that comes up right around mid-July, 15th through the 20th. That's an important date to watch because that can be when there's some big job changes, or if you've been waiting to hear back from them, that's when you're finally making the move or getting back to work. All ruled by Mercury, which is retrograding over your Venus in your whole sign 9th. I really feel like this is about you getting to a place and getting settled in July and getting prepared to go back to work. That's what I think. Financial situation is more Saturn. Look, Saturn's in the 4th house. So you're realizing you have to make sacrifices, or you have to be willing to move, or you have to be willing to give something up in order to make more money. And Pluto's sitting right on top of your Uranus too. So it's saying, you know, this is about being willing to go to a place that's different, or letting some things go, or maybe you're going to have to sell some stuff or get rid of some stuff to be able to make the move a little bit easier. But that willingness to make changes both financially and physically makes it more so easy for you to move. So it's like, I do think you will. I don't think it's going to be easy. I think that there's going to be a sense of, oh my God, I'm doing this. Okay, we got to get rid of things, and like the financial pressure on top of moving. But getting into a job and getting situated is pretty positive. Also, you're a Libra. So from the perspective of a Libra sun, Jupiter going into Cancer means good things for your career. It's in your 7th house. So it's new partnerships that you're going to be taking on. That could be professionally or romantic. And then you will see that retrograde is going to be in your 8th. So you're probably going to be feeling like the second half of July, like money is better or things are flowing is what I would assume, if you end up kind of getting the positions. And then finally, you're going to have an eclipse that's going to be on your midheaven too. And that's pretty prominent. So even if this gets delayed, this solar eclipse that you're going to have at 29 degrees on your ascendant is planting a seed for a new change at work, ruled by Mercury. Mercury's on the North Node, and it's in September. So I'm like, okay, so what happens? You know, does it get pushed back? Are you going back and forth with them, you know, until July? And then they say, okay, well, you know, maybe we're going to make it possible for you to do it in August or September. You know, you're going to have to give it this long to really kind of get situated into something. But what I do know is that this solar eclipse is really good for your career and your status. And also because it's opposing Saturn, it's helping you move out of your home base and move more into, you know, future opportunities with your career. It'll be hard to move because of finances, but this job is my dream job and I'll be studying full time. You just have to understand that because the sun represents your studying and Saturn is going through the part of your home, and it's also going to be about like professional commitments, like moving, studying, having the job. I'm not going to say it's not possible, but like, I mean, it's going to be a lot to juggle with Saturn in opposition to your sun. Saturn also rules studying. So it's going to be like you going like, well, there's the career and then there's the job and then I'm also going to school. Like, I'm not going to say you can't do it, but be aware that this is a lot that you're going to be doing all at one time. And from my perspective, the opportunities are going to keep coming with work and professional stuff. So whether there's a delay or they say, hey, not yet, that solar eclipse that's going to happen in September is really kind of putting you in like the launching position for some major changes that's going to be happening with you, like professionally. But certainly leave a little bit of room for negotiation, because the next 2 weeks with Jupiter going into Cancer, because it's going to square your Sun and it's going to square your Saturn, there's going to be new opportunities to change your home and your relationships with people. But the change is going to come so suddenly that you're going to be like, is it this or is it that? Right? And yeah, I mean, Jupiter in the 7th house, counselors, therapists, astrologers, partners, family relationships, people giving you like feedback. Like you're going to have a lot of people being there to kind of help you and help you navigate, you know, what direction to go in. So it's definitely a good time to get a reading. Just keep in mind, I don't know where you're moving to, but I have a feeling because your Saturn is retrograde and it's out of 4, it's going to bring you back home next year. So anywhere you go, I don't know what's going to happen with the job or what. For all we know, you may or may not like where you're living. But there's something about like next March, April, as you come into your Saturn return and planets are on your south node, that you're kind of coming back home for some reason, right? Yeah, I mean, Jupiter and Mercury in your 7th house, I mean, that's coming up at the end of this next week. I mean, that's good news. That's going to be on Sunday. You know, there's some good news coming. But it's going to come with a slight kind of deviation of a plan. There's going to be some kind of change. So it works in your favor knowing that you're a Sag rising, that you've got people who are going to want to work with you. They're going to say, hey, you know, this is the decision we've made. It also works in your favor being a Libra. But I think that it's because your Sun is at 0 degrees and your Saturn is at 4, that for the next like month, Jupiter is going to square. So it's basically saying if you want these new things to come in, you're going to have to be willing to work with people, talk to people, be patient, also be willing to make some pretty drastic changes either at home or at work in order to make these things happen. And then I would say the longest I would give this is until about September, when those eclipses start kicking in. Even if you don't get the job now, there's going to be something that's going to happen right around the end of September that's going to be like immediate, and it is going to give you the room to be able to make changes on the home front. So hopefully that's helpful for you. You have to let me know what happens. I'm very curious about the eclipse at the end of September. That to me seems like the most prominent personally. All right, so we've got Michelle, Braden, and let me plug Michelle in because I don't think I plugged her in. I was waiting for her info. No worries, Valerie. I'll send it back to you. Let's see. Sorry, guys. I have to kind of go back through this. Why am I not seeing Michelle? Let me know what happens with the job. I'm curious, because whatever it is, it's going to be a big sudden change. So if you get it, you definitely are moving. Why am I not seeing? Oh, there it is, Michelle. Okay. Michelle, I don't see your location. I see August 7th, 87. Uh, 4:02. Let's see. 9:30 p.m. Pittsburgh. There it is. There we go. All right, August 7th, 87, 9:30 p.m. in Pittsburgh. And did you have a particular question for me? Otherwise, I'm just going to talk to you about the full moon. You guys got to put your info in there. Slowly pivoting into multiple streams of income, working for myself with a strong desire for teaching. Not a traditional sense. I'll be about 2 years. Tell me about the eclipse chart. What eclipse are you talking about? The full moon, maybe? So I'm going to assume you meant the full moon. So for Michelle, the Sagittarius full moon's, I mean, it's right on your midheaven. So that's significant because it does represent some significant turning point revolving around your career, your professional life, ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter is in your 4th house, conjunct Mercury. So it's putting an emphasis on communication with like home and family matters and what creative things you need to be doing, what things revolving around teaching, youth, education, children, what creative projects are kind of coming to the surface in terms of your professional life. So, you know, I think this is a little bit more challenging for people who obviously have mutable signs because it's going to not only square, you know, your ascendant or your descendant in your case, and even your Chiron, it's going to square the north and the south node, right? So this means that there's about to be some major conclusion or decision about a major transformation at work that will have an impact on you emotionally or in terms of like your creative self-expression. So it's kind of like bringing something to fruition and being like, hey, this is what I've been working on. This is what I've got going on. So if you're pivoting to multiple streams of income so you can work for yourself, that's great because Jupiter's getting ready to go into your 5th house. And you'll see later in the year, it's going to start trining Saturn in your 1st. Little difficult, I think, with Saturn and Neptune going into Aries because a lot of Pisces risings are now having to get really concrete and clear about how they're making money and what the vision is and what they can create and budgeting and making sure that they're staying on top of their expenses and they're not over expending on some of their creative ventures and hobbies. Positive Jupiter transits are going to manifest as, I think, you know, seeing some turning points in your professional life. And if you look at your natal Jupiter, it's at 29 degrees in the 2nd house. So something that's been kind of going on in recent years is you've had the North Node there, which really woke you up to, hey, I want to make my own money. I want to be independent. It's worth making those necessary changes. You had eclipses there, right? And now you have Saturn coming into the same sign. So one thing at a time. It's going to take a couple of years for that to, the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction to happen. I would focus on what you can do from home, what you can do that's creative, what you're most emotionally tied to. Great time to get ready to like launch something, you know? And I feel like this is a turning point where you're kind of looking at everything you've been building and kind of working on over the last 6 months. And you're like, okay, am I doing it? Not only is it on your midheaven, but it's also trining your Jupiter. That's your chart ruler by about 9 degrees, but that could be good for money-making opportunities. Venus is going to be nearby as well. The other thing that I think about is like, it looks like you've just been kind of like working your tail off. I mean, you've had a Mercury retrograde that went through your 6th house of reorganizing your schedule and your work this last summer. You've had a Mars retrograde that was kind of taking place at the end of the year into the beginning of this year. And all of those retrogrades, I don't think have been in vain. They have been in aspects to your Sagittarius placements. So it's about you carving out more time for creative work, which is very important if you've got a bunch of Leo that's in the 5th house. I need to have time for creativity, self-expression, doing something that's going to be more personal, and making the time for it, right? So my thought is that I would watch when Jupiter starts getting into your 5th house. Okay, so as we're getting to like end of July, beginning of August, good for romance, good for creativity, good for personal business, and it's also trining your ascendant. And then you're going to start to see, you know, transits going into your 7th house, which could be good for clients. It could be good for relationships, offering services, selling things. Certainly those Virgo new moons are going to be really potent for that. And also the fall. So when you have Jupiter trining Saturn, I feel like the more committed and dedicated you are, especially in like September, to some of your self-employed, you know, projects, maybe you're going to get to about November, December, and you're going to go, okay, I'm doing all these little things. Which ones are going to be the ones that are going to be the most like productive? Which one's making the most money? Where am I bringing in the most clients? You might feel like you're trimming the fat a little bit in November and maybe kind of putting some things off to the side if you feel like certain things are making more money than others. So I would kind of stay full steam ahead until you're getting until about November of this year, and you could see what's actually working and what's not. And you can make the necessary kind of cuts or changes then, or you can kind of scale out of one, you know, direction and go into another. You may do the same thing also in July going into August because you're going to have a Mercury retrograde that's going to be in your 6th. But that's more scheduling things, making time to complete projects, and kind of getting certain, you know, creative things like up and running. I think having Sagittarius midheaven, you know, you need a lot of freedom. You need the ability to either travel, teach, learn, publish, educate, whatever. And this is all ruled by Jupiter in your second house in Aries. So it's like you really will be more successful. I think you'll have more freedom. I think you'll be happier if you're working for yourself rather than other people, because that's Saturn, Uranus in your 10th house. It's like you don't want to do something that's like traditional and kind of structured and something where you're, you know, working for like a company. I'm not saying you couldn't. The Capricorn moon doesn't mind it, but all that Sagittarius doesn't want to do it. And because you're a bit of a workhorse with all these planets in Leo, if you're really passionate about something, like you'll really be committed and dedicated to it. And I think if you're building it and you're doing it for yourself, it's going to be that much more fulfilling. I think just the key here is looking at, you know, Pluto in opposition to your Mercury this year. And Pluto is in your 11th house of others. So this could be networks, professional associations. This could be your audience. This could be promoting what you're working on, what you're doing, and whether or not you're getting recognition from other people for what you're creating. Well, you know, Pluto is going to be about marketing. It's going to be about teaching. It's going to be about traveling. So there has been a little bit of tension revolving around, well, how do I get recognition for what I'm working on or what I'm building, right? And I think the key here is like to network with people. Go and join groups, go online, join groups, promote your businesses, like support other people, you know, find ways to be able to support other people that might be in a similar industry where you can kind of connect and collaborate, because that's what Pluto is trying to get you to do there. And that will actually really help you, especially as Uranus is kind of getting ready to go into Gemini, especially with like media. You know, there's going to be opportunities for being able to do media things and doing, you know, readings, podcastings, things like that, where you're connecting and collaborating with others. My job wants me to do astrology readings at my work. No kidding. That's funny. Well, I mean, you have Uranus in your 10th house. It's retrograde, right? It's conjunct Saturn. So there is a sense of now that, you know, you're coming out of your Saturn square, it's like, well, do I feel like I've learned enough? Do I feel like I'm capable? You know, can I lead groups of people? Can I share? But if you're sharing in a group setting, like if you're writing horoscopes or if you're talking to people about forecasts or you're planning things or whatever, like that actually can be a great utilization of the Saturn square Saturn. That you're like, okay, now I can like do the forecasting. It's very much like Pisces, I think. And talking more about the emotions and the feelings and better understanding people collectively, right? So I think it's about applying some of the things that you have learned and sharing it with other people. And like, man, 6th house sun it's a fixer, you know. I mean, I hate to say that, but it's fixing things for people, helping people, directing people, scheduling, planning. So there could be other avenues of being able to kind of utilize some of your forecasts, you know, for other things, launches, projects. You know, talking to people about peak periods that are going to be the most productive, that kind of stuff. That could be something that you could consider offering to the collective, something you could kind of like sell or share too. Anyway, I hope that that's helpful. Definitely that full moon is a big turning point for you though. It's really about kind of putting some of your skills and your mastery to the test, right? Let me know what happens. Okay, we got Braden. All right. November 2nd, 1993, 8:08 p.m. in West Covina. That's where my dad's from. Hey, Candace, thanks for all that you do. My name's Bri. My partner and I have been struggling to conceive for the last year. Is this something I should continue to focus on for the next year, or should I shift my mindset? I guess I need advice on the matter. All right, well, let's see. Well, look at your 5th house. Wow. So usually children, you know, is going to be the 5th. Pregnancy can actually be more seen through the 8th. So I'm looking at what's going on with Saturn and what's going on with Venus. Okay, well, good news is that Saturn and Venus trine. So that doesn't necessarily suggest that there's any limitation in being able to have a kid, I don't think. Venus is also in its domicile, Saturn's in its domicile, and it's trining the moon, which is your chart ruler. But it's all in intellectual signs. So it's more about like moon in the 12th, rest, recuperation, meditative practice, breathing work, you know, something that's going to kind of like ease your mind. And you've got all of this Scorpio Okay. Sun, Mercury, Pluto, Mars. I have that same stellium. Ha! And it all in conjuncts or quincunxes your moon. So on one hand, there's a side of you that's like, I need privacy, I need rest, I need relaxation, I need to be left alone to do my thing, to read, study, do whatever you want to do. And then there's the other side of you that's like motor brain, that's like, no, we need to do this, we need to have a kid. So it's like very back and forth. Usually for pregnancy, I look at, you know, aspects with the moon. I look at aspects with the 5th house. I look at your annual perfection. My thought is just looking at the annual perfection off the bat, because you're 31 this year, so you're in an Aquarius year, which is your whole sign 8th. This is going to be talking about like your natal Saturn in the whole sign 8th house, which is squaring your Sun, Mercury, Mars stuff, which would be about your 5th house. So emotional, psychological, energy, nervous system related things are going to come up. Saturn is your time lord, and Saturn's actually hanging out in your whole sign 9th, going into your 10th. So you're ready for a status change. That could be being a parent, that could be a relationship change, you know, more serious commitment. It can also be needing more support from your partner maybe, and helping you through the process of feeling safe and secure, all that stuff. So pregnancy is going to be seen with transits involving your 5th house ruler, your 8th house, or your moon. So Jupiter left your moon, but it's in a barren sign. Gemini is barren. So I don't think anything came of it. But the good news is that we do see Jupiter that is still slightly in a trine to your Venus, 5th house ruler, and also in a trine to your natal Jupiter. I see 12th house as the spirit. So it's like what we're praying for, what we're visioning, what we're meditating on, what we're dreaming about, and it's like before something comes into form. So my advice is when Venus is coming into conjunction with Jupiter, it's going to be a really strong period of time, I think, for you to set some intentions revolving around pregnancy. If you have software, if you have astro.com, I would also recommend going and looking at your lunar returns and go and look at them month by month, and like the months that you have Jupiter on the ascendant, Jupiter in the 5th, maybe even, Moon on the ascendant, Moon in the 5th, maybe Moon in the 8th house, or a strong 5th house presence. It can be a month that's better for conception. So you're going to see the Sun conjunct Jupiter with the new moon on your ascendant. That is like the best time to try to get pregnant. Okay, so that's going to be the end of June. So you can look at your cycle, see what you got going on, but the fact that that's going to be on your ascendant, which is planting a seed for fertility, it's squaring Saturn, which means you're getting serious about this commitment and you need the support of your partner. And also, in order for you to grow, you might feel like you need take a step back from professional responsibilities. Now, that's not me saying quit your job. That's not what I'm saying. But Saturn and Neptune squaring Jupiter on your ascendant means that you're like, there's one side of me that's very devoted and dedicated and focused on my professional life or what I'm doing or my responsibilities. The other side is saying, well, but I really want to be a mom. And like, how can I have both? And there's conflict, basically. So if you want to grow, Jupiter in Cancer, you have to emotionally feel your way into it and be nurturing and more in tune with what's going on with your emotions and your body. Also, Cancer is going to be about hormones and cycles, and it's going to be connected to your breast, and it's going to be connected to your stomach. Jupiter makes things grow, so Jupiter hitting the ascendant can very much be a pregnancy transit for a lot of people, especially if it's aspecting planets in the 5th house. And then you're going to see Jupiter is then going to continue to keep moving. It'll eventually start coming into a trine with your Sun, your Mercury, and your Pluto. But before that, when Venus, your 5th house ruler, hits Jupiter, that's when you're like, okay, I'm setting an intention, or, I'm asking for Venus to bless me, or I'm trying to bring in, fertility energy. And that's going to be right around mid-August, 10th, 11th, 12th. Usually when you have to look, like transit moon on the ascendant and transit moon in the 5th, those can be more fertile. It depends on the sign. Water signs are generally always going to be fertile. And then another time that you're going to want to watch is going to be when Mars goes into your 5th house, when it's in Scorpio. Okay? And when it's in Scorpio with the moon, September 22nd, 23rd, 24th, very potent time to be getting pregnant, because the moon's there, Mars is there in its home sign, it's trining your ascendant, it's trining Jupiter. And then you are going to have a Mercury retrograde that's going to be, I think, going into your 5th house. So that could very well be, oh, my schedule is changing, my diet is changing, my habits are changing because you're pregnant. Why? Because you're going to see Venus come into conjunction with Mercury. So that could be right around the end of November. And you do have a bunch of planets in Scorpio, that square Saturn. So there is some sense about emotionally feeling secure, financially feeling secure, psychologically feeling secure, dealing with inner child stuff. Anything revolving around fear of children, how it's going to change and transform your life, like that kind of stuff. And I think there's some emotional or psychological stuff, just to be fair, because Mercury's so close to your Sun retrograde. I would almost recommend, like, when you do ultimately get pregnant, like hypnobirthing might be good for you, or even going and seeing a hypnotherapist now. Newborn care specialist here. Maybe this is a good sign. Yay for babies. Well, there's gonna be a lot of babies that are gonna happen this year with Jupiter in Cancer. So the moon in the 12th isn't absolute doom for pregnancy. No. Because if you see, the moon is in the 12th house. Yes, it's in a barren sign, but it's trining Saturn, her partner ruler, and it's also trining Venus and Jupiter, and Venus is in its domicile. So no, I don't think so. I don't. I think that if this were me, because 5th house from your 7th or your Saturn, depending on how you look at it, is what your partner produces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Saturn is not there, but Chiron is there, and Chiron is kind of coming into a square with some stuff still. So, I'm not going to tell you what to do, I'm not a doctor, but I would be like, well, Saturn going into your 10th house is like, make a decision. If you are going to try to have a kid or you want to be a parent, it's about creating that space so that way that spirit body can drop in and know that you're ready, that you're committed, that you're not going to be stressed out about what you're doing with work, and communicating and talking to your partner, being like, guess what? More responsibility on you, and that's part of this new vision that you're imagining, I think, with Saturn and Neptune in your 10th house, honestly. There's so many things that I do to look at pregnancy. I mean, it's like usually it takes a whole session, but I look at the progressed moon, I look at the progressed 10th house, I look at what's going on with the solar return. But certainly the retrogrades that are going to be happening here are going to be very prominent for you in November. So I would be keeping an eye on what's going on there with your cycle. Progressed moon's still in your, it's still in your 1st house, okay? And next year, Jupiter is going to hit that. So what you're going to find is, well, maybe not that soon. Maybe you could see pregnancy opportunities kind of the summer going into the fall of 2026. So if there is like a pregnancy at the end of this year, that makes sense. It checks out right around the time that Jupiter and Mars are going to be there, pretty close to still being in your 1st house, and it's going to trine planets that are in your 5th. And Mars rules your progressed 5th, and it's going to be conjunct Jupiter. So I do think it's still on the horizon, but getting right with some of the emotional stuff and sorting out work will definitely help, so that way you feel more so ready and capable. Maybe go and think about what happened the last time you had Jupiter across your 1st house, but I know that's a good transit for trying to have kids, especially if it's trining the 5th. Anyway, I hope that's helpful for you. And we have Cassidy. You're welcome. Let me know what happens. I would like getting those comments and those emails. That's like, I'd happened. All right, Cassidy is August 26, 93, 11/27 in Jacksonville, Florida. I just want to know if you see a romance coming in. I've never had a professional reading before. Well, welcome. Looks like you're a Taurus rising, Sun in Virgo, and your moon is in Capricorn. Earth mama. Look at that Earth trine. All right, so just a couple things about your chart if you haven't had a reading before. So I know you're a Virgo. Listen to Taurus rising, all right? Listen to Taurus rising because the horoscopes are kind of based off of your ascendant sign. It's going to tell you where planets are moving in which house. So listen to Taurus, then listen to Virgo, then you can listen to Capricorn. Venus rules your chart. So when Venus is changing signs, when Venus is going into Taurus, when it's going into Libra, when it's going into Pisces, These are going to be better times for you because your chart ruler is going to be pleased. And Venus is actually going into, it's actually just went into Taurus. So having Venus on your ascendant off the bat is really good for beauty, attraction, bringing people in, all of that good stuff. So you have this transit once a year. It's just going to give you a little bit of a boost. So maybe pay attention to what's happening around like the 21st through roundabout, let's say, you know, the beginning of July, right? Venus will be in your first house. Good for your beauty, appearance, attraction, all that stuff. And Venus will sit on your ascendant and oppose Pluto, which is your relationship lord. And that means that you may draw the attention of somebody in. Now, if you're Venus, other people are going to be Mars, right? Or Pluto. So look at what's happening when Venus is on your ascendant. Mars is coming into conjunction with your sun, okay? That could bring some attention from a person. And then you're going to see Mars will continue to go through your 5th house, which is decent for dating. Keep an eye on people who can be a little flaky, though, around like the 3rd week of July. Mars South Node means somebody from the past comes back, or there's a little bit of back and forth with somebody, or somebody who's younger. And then when we look at what's happening with your natal Mars, Saturn isn't opposing it yet. That's fine. You'll have your Mars return. I don't know if you meet people at the gym or if you meet people, I don't know, at work. But Mars being in the 6th house means you might meet them through work in some way. And Mars is in Libra, so it can be like extracurricular things you do after work or going out with like coworkers or, you know, socializing or whatever. But that kind of heats up also in mid-August, like the 3rd week of August. And Mars will conjunct Mars, and then it's also going to conjunct Jupiter right around your birthday. So definitely a time that I would be out trying to mix and mingle and meet people. And then you're going to see down the road, Sun, Mercury, Mars are all going to go into your 7th house. So this is going to be a pretty active period because Mars is in its home sign. So from, let's say, mid-October on, there's going to be a huge relationship emphasis, dating. And it looks like Mercury is going to turn retrograde really close to your North Node. So there could be a sense of like somebody saying to you, hey, you know, I want to get to know you more. I'm interested. What are you looking for? You know, somebody's going to talking to you about like if you're interested in commitment, because the Mercury is really tied to the 2nd house, which is about like feeling wanted, feeling chosen. So there might be a little bit of a back and forth, like, what are we doing here? What is this kind of vibes? And you could be hearing from people from the past as well. And then it's going to drop back into Scorpio, where you're going to see Mercury conjunct Venus, your chart ruler. So that also tells me there is a little bit of a back and forth. Then at the end of November, that's like, what's the plan? What are we doing long-term wise? What are we looking for? You know, what's the goal here? And I love that it's hitting Mercury, because Mercury is about romance and the 7th house is commitment. So there could be somebody who's saying like, I love you or have feelings for you. And like, you're like, oh my God, what? And then you're trying to figure out, okay, well, what's the next step? What are we doing? Love that it's trining Jupiter, good for communication, good for travel. Love that it's trining your Venus, really good for communication and also commitment in relationships, emotions. There's a lot of emotions here, vulnerability. And it's also trining Saturn. So you might be feeling confident in telling other people, hey, I've met somebody. This is what's going on. Meet my friend, you know. So I like the Mercury retrograde conjunct Venus. I think what's funny is that it's like it's connected to the South Node. So it could be people that you've known from the time that you were younger. Maybe you went to school together. Maybe it was somebody from the past who's coming back around. And they're like, I'm serious now. Now I'm more so interested. That kind of stuff. And if there's really positive Mars transits or Pluto transits, usually a relationship will flourish. Well, Saturn is trining Pluto. Sure, if relationships work out, if friends approve, great. The only thing you want to watch out for is next year. Next year, you're going to have Saturn start coming into an opposition with your Mars. And that tells me if people aren't, you know, totally committed, if they're not making the time, if they're not dedicated, you know, you could see some bumps in the road, but that's going to be closer to next spring. But I think a lot of like Taurus risings, just knowing that you're going to have all these planets going through the 12th house, you need time alone in nature, or you need time alone to work out, or you're wanting more private time or more time to reflect. Not that you can't do relationships, but maybe you'll be traveling, maybe you'll be getting into fitness, maybe you'll be training. There will be things that'll come up that you're just like, I need to have my space. And because it's all in conjunct or quincunx, your Pluto in the 12th, where you have a tendency to attract like intense people, It's about bringing in people who are going to understand and honor that you're going to need some time to yourself as well, that it's not going to be being completely consumed with the relationship, which people have a tendency to do for whatever reason with Pluto in the 7th. And then the Mars-Jupiter conjunction too, it can be, you know, you have partners that mirror this behavior. The 6th house for you is your habits, but it's what your partners kind of run and do and hide. So whether it's, you know, they're not sure about commitment, or they're a little unsure about, you know, being public, or maybe they go through periods where they're kind of like ghosty. Now it's going to be your turn with Saturn and planets going through your 12th house. So you're going to be like, if you're going to be doing that, I'm not partaking, or, you know, if you need space, that's fine. I need space too. And learning to honor that, not feeling like you always have to kind of like make sacrifices for other people. South node hitting your Juno, South node hitting your Sun, eclipses being there, you know, over the next year also seems to imply that there could be a soulmate coming in. There could be somebody coming in that you're like, oh my God, like, I feel like I've met this person before, or I've never felt this way about somebody before, right? So there's going to be some stuff. Watch for those eclipses that are going to start getting closer to your personal planets in Virgo. You're going to have an eclipse right on your Juno, March 3rd, 2023. Big partnerships vibes here. And then you're going to have another one that's going to be in opposition to your Sun right around your birthday, full moon lunar eclipse. Around August 27th. And look at this. Venus is conjunct your Jupiter. So that's actually good for love and relationships going into the next year, even in spite of the Saturn opposition, you know. Anyway, I hope that's helpful in kind of giving you some insight and some timing. Don't hesitate to be clear about needing some space to needing some space to yourself this year. I think that's very prominent. And next year, you'll see Jupiter hit your Venus. So that's going to also be good. Maybe for moving in with somebody, you know, traveling more, anything like that. All right, let me make sure I didn't miss anybody. I'm just listening, learning today. I had a question about what you said on Gemini being the Baron. It's about, well, somebody being like more so common. I mean, Gemini deals more with like common people. I think Jupiter going through Gemini right now is more about talking about like the commoner and what they need. So I don't know what Baron sign. I was like, what? Well, it's an air sign, right? So usually you're going to see the moon sign, you know, being in Cancer, being in Pisces, being in Taurus, being a little bit more fertile. The Baron signs are usually tied to Gemini, Virgo, and Aquarius, if I remember correctly. It doesn't mean they can't have kids, but definitely it means that there is going to be more challenge when it comes to like fertility or like reproductive stuff. And a lot of it also depends on other aspects it makes in the chart. But what I have found is that like when Venus is going through Aries, when the moon is going through Gemini, when it's going through Virgo, or when it's going through Aquarius, it's harder for fertility, basically. We want to see the planets that are going to be kind of going through either water signs or signs where you're going to have an exalted moon, you know, Taurus. But everybody's chart's different. You can have a Baron sign that can be on your 5th house cusp. It doesn't mean you can't have children, right? Well, and if you have Pisces in the 5th and you have Saturn there right now, or you have had Saturn there, you know, I would say, well, Saturn's going to retrograde back in the fall. You're going to have eclipses in the fall that are going to trine Jupiter. So if Pisces is your 5th house, you know, your Scorpio rising, you're going to be watching what's kind of going on with like Jupiter. You know, your 5th house Lord is going to be in the 9th. So you're going to be learning more about conception and healing and transforming the body and maybe hormones. And also this can also be connected to like what you're eating and what you're ingesting, right? When do you have openings for private readings, or when will your next reading be? So I do readings every Friday. So I'm here every Friday, 6 o'clock Central Time. Next week is going to be tarot. So astrology is every other week. If you guys want to book a personal reading with me, I'm happy to chat with you. You can click the links below. You can head over to my website at beyondtheveiltarot.com. I'm always booked out like 2 to 4 months at a time. So I think I'm taking readings right now in August. But if you guys want to book with me, I do solar returns, natal chart readings, all kinds of transit readings, sinister readings, and much more. Huh?
Did you get the blossoming?
The what?
The second one. You missed that one.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
No. I got her. Yeah, I got her. Wait a second. I just want to make sure.
Sorry, guys. We're going back and forth, making sure I'm not missing anyone. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. Definitely check out my sessions. I'm happy to help you if you have any questions. And all of my availability is there. Did I not? Well, now I'm getting confused with Blossom Newborn Care. That was Brianna, right? Or was that Braden? Wrong person? No, it's a different person. I take that back. Okay, I almost missed someone. So for Blossoming Newborn Care, I want to make sure I get you. There we go. Sorry, I got the two names confused. Let's pull that up. And I think that was for Andre. Okay. Audrey. There we go. Sorry about that. I almost missed you. All right. So I've got you here, December 17th, 1973, 6:55 a.m. in Seattle. Are you here? Newborn cord specialist. Okay. So I know she's in the chat. Did you have a specific question for me? Yeah, there we go. Hi. Sag rising. North node in Sag, sun in Sag, moon in Libra. This looks like a lot like the chart that I just saw. Sorry about that. I almost missed you. So what can I answer for you about your chart? Do you have questions about the full moon? Just about work and upcoming divorce. Okay. Well, sorry to hear about the divorce. I think part of this is like the Jupiter Saturn stuff is kind of getting activated right now. So your Jupiter, obviously, Sag rising, Sag sun. As Jupiter is coming into conjunction with the South Node, you are releasing something, you're letting something go, and Mercury is there as well. So there could still be legal matters, signing documents, trying to agree to things. And over like the next 2 weeks, Jupiter and Mercury are going to come into a square with Saturn and Neptune. So from a Placidus standpoint, it's like, are there decisions being made about home matters, you know, what you're buying, what you're selling, who's keeping what, if you're getting rid of a house. From a whole sign standpoint, it's going through your fifth. So it's going to be about children if you have kids. So it's going to be things like, all right, well, you know, are we settling out, figuring out who's going to take care of the kid, who's going to have, you know, child support, or who's going to be having primary custody. And it's expansion and contraction energy. Probably the most intense, I would say, like the next month. But Saturn and Neptune, you know, is in your house of communication. So it's saying like communicating, being brave, you know, getting the point across, saying what you need to say. And it's in a superior square with your natal Saturn. So it means that moving, traveling, communicating, and signing documents or negotiating is putting the pressure on partners to make some big changes emotionally and within your relationships, right? Divorce actually, I think, is even more so connected to the 6th house because that's the 12th to the 7th. So as Uranus is kind of going through your 6th house right now, it's been quincunx and in conjunct your sun and your North Node. I really feel it's like you going, I have to let this go. I have to make a change. Like it's not healthy for me. And needing to come up with a new habit or a new routine while you're letting or kind of shedding old relationship, you know, things and letting that go. Pluto is very close to your Venus, which could also dramatically change or transform relationships as well as money, resources. It's in your 2nd house. It's not conjunct yet. It's now retrograde away. And while it's doing that, it's trining your natal Pluto and your moon. So it's a great time for transformations of your career, your status. It's like there can now be empowerment that can come through changing your relationships. Both my jobs end next week. What should I be focusing on for the next 2 months? Well, I would say Jupiter going into your 8th house, believe it or not, usually is good for like settlements or negotiations. There could be windfalls. There could also be like compensation that can be coming from property or real estate or family. It could also be helping you kind of sort out some of like the resource matters pertaining to the divorce. And even though it's squaring, Saturn and Neptune, it could mean that there's going to be some kind of change on the home front. Ideally, this is actually going to be good for you financially. You might get a chunk of something, or there could be some kind of like settlement with the divorce. It's also squaring your natal moon and Pluto. So it's going to be something where they're going to be challenging you about what you're trying to kind of ask for, or what you're kind of dissolving, but it'll be brief. I would be more focused on, Jupiter going into the 8th. How can I be saving? How can I be investing? It could be a great transit for therapy. It could be a great transit also for transforming something about your home or your finances. So refinancing something, paying off debt, dealing with loans. Work, I think, is also changing because you've got the South Node going through your whole sign 10th house of career. And what you're going to find is that even though your job is ending, Mars is going to start coming into conjunction with the South Node, and it's going to reactivate some eclipse degrees. So you may actually be back to work, or there may be work opportunities sprouting up around the 3rd week of July. And then you're going to have Moon on your Mars and your Pluto trine Venus. So actually, end of July into August looks a little bit better money-wise. Mercury's going retrograde in your 8th. It could also be a time where, you're feeling like finally you're able to kind of get back on track with some of your financial goals. Maybe also start thinking about training or traveling of some kind. That may also pop up for you. And then you're going to see Venus and Jupiter go into your 8th house. So it's like those are transits I see where somebody gets an inheritance, they get a settlement, something just kind of miraculously falls in their hands. They get some kind of support. That's in August. But I don't think it's just coming out of the blue. I think you're working because Mars is in your 10th house, trining Pluto in your Venus. So I think that maybe this is just you feeling like, okay, now I can kind of get the ball rolling again. And you're going to want to be watching the Virgo eclipses the next couple of months. It's not going to be until the end of summer, so you're not quite there yet. But when the eclipses start coming in Virgo and Pisces, so you're going to have one that's in Pisces. It's more about traveling or moving or vehicles around early September. And then you're going to have the other one that's going to be closer to the solar eclipse around the 21st of September that's in your career house. And it's scoring all your stuff. So that's almost like, oh, okay, well, am I going into a new job direction? Am I starting a new career? Am I launching something new? And likely with Mercury conjunct the moon and Pluto, it means that you're like, okay, I have a new status. I'm changing my name. I'm divorced. I also have a new job. Like there's like a whole new identity that's almost like kind of emerging where something new is showing up and you're breaking with the past, whether that's past home, family, relationship situations, and you're focusing on this new thing that's coming up. Really lean into like emotional healing. I think with Jupiter in the 8th house, it's time to like really focus on, okay, now that everything is like really shifting and I have time to like take a second to take a step back, know that financially things actually look pretty solid with that transit. And if you want to travel for work, the likelihood is you can get the show on the road and you can be doing more of that like July going into August. So when Mercury's retrograde in your 9th, when you've got planets going into your 9th, that's going to be a lot easier for you to be able to do those things. And also like, man, I mean, you got Mercury on your ascendant. So traveling for work, teaching, in some capacity would actually be really good for you. So I think that Jupiter in the 8th house is going to be more about negotiating, making sure that you're getting jobs that are going to be able to pay you what you need, that kind of stuff. Definitely look into Pluto transit your Venus. Look into Pluto transit trine natal Venus and natal moon. Both of those planets, those transits are kind of telling me that there's going to be huge job and like financial changes that are going to happen. And it's going to be like a job ends, a new career comes in. A relationship ends, a new career period comes in. And right now with Chiron on top of your Mars, it looks like there's a lot of like healing the inner child or working through like heartbreak and vulnerability and like learning to have fun again and like be able to enjoy hobbies and have things that you can do that brings you pleasure. That could be more physically active or, kind of like risk taking or like athletic in some way. Anyway, I hope that that's helpful for you and then I was able to catch you before I signed off. With that being said, I want to say thank you guys so much for hanging out with me on a Friday night. You can catch me here most Fridays at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. That's 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. Click the links below if you want to book a reading with me. If you want to learn astrology or if you want to check out my latest webinar on Saturn and Aries, head over to beyondtheveiltarot.com. Please give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Come back and leave me comments and let me know what happens. Make sure you're subscribed and I will catch you guys back here on Sunday for the Astro Weather. Enjoy the rest of your guys' weekend. I'll see all of you very soon and enjoy this up and coming new moon.